Yes, yes, y'all. I am back. I am under the weather, but I'm here. This is episode 196. We're getting closer to that 200th episode. I know we've missed a few weeks in between since episode 190, but that could not be avoided. Um, you know what it is. I like to come on here before we start the show officially. By the way, shout out to Joe, who's out there in the chat saying good evening. Shout out to you. I like to come on here and let you guys know what we have in store tonight. Let me see if I can find my actual notes here. In the meantime, hit the like button for me. Share the show to your social media. Let people know what you're doing on this lovely Saturday. Even though I'm under the weather, it's still a good day. Good day to be alive. With that said, tonight's show, we'll be discussing, will the Afrikaner be the face of apartheid or the new wave of American racial segregationism? When we're talking about the Trump administration making plans to have migrants deported to ... Rwanda. We're gonna look at the crash out of the year. Or was he justified? We're gonna try to answer: is it a truth or a lie? This is about this Hispanic kid who used to be around Kanye West. I can't think of his name right now. He's talking about he's talking about white folks paying their money to move away from around black folks. So he spews a bunch of things. We're gonna ask you guys and our partners: is it truth or lie? I'm gonna try to answer the question: are liberals the problem? Those are the topics that we have in store for you tonight. I hope my panelists do show up tonight. In the meantime, like I said, please hit the like button. Please share the show to others, have other people come in and have these discussions with us as well. What I'm going to do now is start the show officially. And on the other side, I'm going to drop Shoot the Breeze topic number 1, as well as introduce any and all panelists who join us tonight. So please stay tuned.
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio. Welcome to the Bitter Medicine Podcast, where it's all about Black empowerment. Our show focuses on Black news and entertainment, arts, science, economics, history, people, and strategies that uplift, empower, and motivate Africans within the diaspora. And now your host, whose favorite color is black, Goku.
Welcome back to the Bitter Medicine Podcast. I am your host, Koku. Just want to remind you guys before we get the show rolling that this show is part of a podcast network called KWAZ Radio. There are other shows on the network you are invited to tune into.
This is D Webb with the Harsh Reality Podcast, asking you to tune in where we tackle the news of the day that affects our community, only on KWAZ Radio.
Peace, family. This is Oni, inviting you to listen to the Pro-Black Perspective, where Black problems are addressed with Black solutions.
Greetings, fam. Tune in to The Learning Curve with me, the Revolutionary Matron, on KWAZ Radio.
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio.
Yes, indeed. I forgot to mention, if you can hear my voice out there, please drop a 1 in the chat. Please drop a 1. Let me know that you can hear my voice and follow the instructions put forward by Joe. Everyone, please like, share, and subscribe, she says. I appreciate that, Joe. I don't have any panelists who have joined me yet, but before, while we wait to see if anyone else joins, very important. I don't know exactly when the 200th episode will drop, but in the meantime, I'd like you guys to join the Discord. Give me some ideas what you think will be a good way to celebrate 200 episodes of Shoot the Breeze. We didn't celebrate for 100. We're gonna celebrate for 200. What should we do in honor of the 200th episode? Also, make sure you're checking out the other shows on KWAZ Radio. That little spot only talked about half of the shows. Make sure you're tuned into the Forecast Radio. Make sure you're tuned in to Brother Bakari's BBN Network. And make sure you're tuned in to Kofi, the Black Critic. Kofi was on live today, and very, very good discussion. I saw Ditso there. I saw Brother Bakari in the chat. Good discussion. So make sure you guys are tuned in to all of those. Joe says if there are any bloopers, we would love to see those. That's interesting. I'll have to look and see if I have bloopers or maybe some funny moments recap. So that's a good idea. That's a good idea. She also says maybe a free giveaway for the 50th viewer. That's a great idea. I'll write that one down for sure. So I'm guessing that you guys can hear me, and that's a good thing. In any event, I don't want to belabor the point much longer. The link to join the panel is pinned to the top of the chat. You guys can join the panel if you like. Just click that link. I'll let you up on the panel. In the meantime, though, without further ado, let's get to Shoot the Breeze topic number 1 tonight. Shoot the Breeze topic number 1 says, will the Afrikaners be the face of apartheid or the new wave of American racial segregationism in the 21st century? Very interesting question. I think we kind of know the answer, but let's see what the attached video has to say about it. Maybe it'll change our minds. So what we're going to do, make sure you guys can see my screen. What we're going to do is we're going to play the video. It's about an 8-minute watch, so sit back, take it all in, formulate your thoughts, opinions, questions, and we'll discuss it once we've viewed it. Stay tuned.
In a move that is already sending shockwaves across global diplomatic circles and stirring fierce domestic debate, President Donald Trump is set to fly in thousands of white African refugees from South Africa to the United States next week. This development, confirmed by internal government memos and officials briefed on the plan, is the culmination of Trump's bold and controversial pledge to offer sanctuary to what he calls persecuted white South Africans, a claim that has drawn both support and condemnation since his return to office. The Trump administration has reportedly fast-tracked the approval process for the first wave of Afrikaners, many of whom are farmers and members of the white ethnic minority in South Africa, while refugee admissions for virtually all other groups remain suspended under Trump's executive order. This exception, crafted specifically for Afrikaners, marks a radical deviation from long-standing U.S. immigration protocol. According to documents obtained by media outlets, the Afrikaners are expected to arrive at Washington Dulles International Airport in Virginia as early as Monday, May 12, 2025, where federal officials are preparing a formal welcome ceremony. The origins of this unprecedented policy trace back to Trump's mounting accusations against the South African government. Since retaking the White House, Trump has repeatedly accused South Africa of engaging in racially motivated persecution against its white minority, particularly Afrikaner farmers. His outrage reached a boiling point earlier this year when South Africa had enacted legislation allowing the government to seize private land, mostly owned by white South Africans, in limited circumstances without offering compensation. While South African officials defended the measure as a step toward justice after decades of apartheid and land dispossession, Trump decried it as state-sponsored racism and swiftly retaliated by cutting U.S. financial aid to South Africa. His stance, considered by many to be a political firebomb, found fertile ground among far-right groups in the U.S. and abroad who view the Afrikaner plight as a battlefront in a broader cultural war. Trump's supporters heralded his policy as a moral obligation to protect white Christians facing systemic discrimination. Within weeks of his declaration, U.S. officials were dispatched to Pretoria to screen potential candidates for refugee status. Over 8,000 requests were received from white South Africans desperate to flee, and the Trump administration fast-tracked the first group of 100, many of them farmers, through a special exemption process that sidestepped the typical refugee backlog. The speed of this processing is raising serious questions. Under normal circumstances, refugees fleeing war and famine, such as those from the Democratic Republic of Congo, Afghanistan, or Myanmar, must wait an average of 18 to 24 months, often enduring years in squalid camps before gaining approval. Yet the Afrikaners being brought to America waited as little as 3 months. The Department of Health and Human Services, rather than the State Department, is managing their resettlement and has already begun coordinating with aid agencies to provide everything from diapers and phones to groceries and weather-appropriate clothing. While the administration frames this as a humanitarian gesture, critics argue it's blatant racial favoritism masquerading as compassion. The move has sparked intense backlash from refugee advocates who accuse the Trump administration of cherry-picking its refugees based on race and ideology. Mark Hetfield, president of the Jewish refugee agency HIS, expressed his deep concern, stating that while his organization would welcome the Afrikaners, they were profoundly disturbed by the government's refusal to admit thousands of other refugees, many of whom have already been cleared for travel. Others, like Timothy Young of Global Refuge, underscored the broader implications, saying that thousands of refugees from around the world remain stranded in limbo despite being fully vetted and approved for travel. He described the selective mobilization as a slap in the face to Afghan allies, religious minorities, and other populations facing extreme violence and persecution. But from Trump's perspective, this is a promise fulfilled and a policy grounded in principle. His administration sees the move as rectifying a global blind spot where white minorities are ignored in the refugee conversation. Trump has long championed policies that elevate Western civilization, and this latest act dovetails with his America First ideology and his base's desire to protect what they see as embattled Western culture. For some Afrikaners, Trump is a savior, marginalized, economically squeezed, and increasingly anxious about their future in post-apartheid South Africa. Some view the United States as their last refuge. They claim to be targets of rising violent crime and victims of systemic neglect by a government still grappling with the legacy of white rule. The Trump administration's swift action has been met with open arms in white enclaves of South Africa, where residents are reportedly preparing for mass departures. For them, Trump's intervention is nothing short of historic. South Africa's government, however, has pushed back forcefully, accusing the United States of meddling in its domestic affairs and misrepresenting its policies. Officials have called Trump's statements inflammatory and untrue, warning that the relocation of Afrikaners could damage diplomatic relations. They argue that the land reform bill has been distorted by foreign media and that violent crime affects all South Africans regardless of race. The most overlooked voices in this drama, however, are those of other refugees, those who have fled genocide, civil war, and famine. only to be sidelined by a system that appears to now prioritize race over need. This moment exposes the raw fault lines of America's refugee and immigration policy under Trump's second term. It's a policy torn between humanitarian ideals and political calculus, between equal protection and selective admission. The Afrikaner exception, as it's now being called in legal circles, may set a precedent that could reshape not just the U.S. refugee system, but the global image of America's role as a refuge for the oppressed. In the end, this story is not simply about planes full of white South African farmers touching down on American soil. It's about whose suffering we choose to see. It's about how power can elevate some cries for help while silencing others. It's about whether humanitarianism, once a bipartisan value, can survive in an era where race and geopolitics are now the gatekeepers of compassion. As the first Afrikaner families begin their journey to the U.S. next week, the world will be watching. Not just South Africans, not just Americans, but millions across the globe who wonder who gets to be saved and who is left behind. Your perspective matters. What do you make of Trump bringing thousands of white South Africans to America as refugees? Share your thoughts and insights in the comments section below.
Interesting stuff. Not surprising for me, but very interesting to see it play it out. I would have usually brought this up. I forgot to save the post that I saw this week. I saw a Black American woman, probably one of these FBA ADOS types, who was saying that she doesn't mind the white foreigners who are being imported. She has a problem with the black ones who look like her. Because as she says, black foreigners to come in and undermine black folks here. But basically she was saying she's okay with the white ones who come and undermine black folks in America. I found that very interesting. Now, she didn't say it quite that way, but she said it in a way of like, she kind of expects them to come in and be biased, etc. But to say that to me means that you also accept them undermining you as well. And again, that's not all Black Americans. That's just this group of FBA ADOS thinking Black Americans. Kofi had a whole conversation about them earlier today. With regards to this topic as well, which I find interesting. Right now, I only have one panelist. I'm going to introduce him, but I'm going to shut up Black Steel, who I see in the chat. So he said to this video, he said, hilarious. Right now, let me welcome in Buana this week. Buana, how are you?
Coco, I'm great. How are you, brother? How have you been? Because I know you've been going through some very sensitive matters. So how have you been? How are you? I'm
doing, all in all, I'm doing okay. Dealing with an air infection right now, but all in all, I'm doing okay. That situation with my dad, he had a little bit of a relapse, but it seems like he's bouncing back each day. So, we just hoping for the best, But me personally, yeah. So, Buana, how have you been?
I'm good. I know things have been very shaky on your end. Tonight, I got to break out. I can't stay the whole night, because I'm dealing with some housekeeping issues, with the woman and all that good stuff. I was really thought you were going to come on tonight, to be honest with you. But I'm going to ride with you, until 9, because I know that this is your first time back, and I'm just going to wait until the others come and do their thing. But I really am happy that you're doing okay. I'm happy that your pops is bouncing back. I know how that could get. That's a tricky situation. So, I'm good though. I'm good. So all of us, we are just patiently waiting on your return. I know things are a bit sketchy right now, but all of us are just really patiently waiting for your return when you'll be comfortable in your space and in the driver's seat for the Better Medicine podcast. So, this is where we are right now.
Yes, sir. So let me just address too. When I'm not gonna have a show, if I know the week before, I'll let you guys know. If it's because it's touch and go. If it's a day of decision, I try to post it on the community tab and in the Discord like around 5:00, 6:00 the latest. So I try to give you all a couple hours in advance to know that I won't be available. So keep your eye out on the posts. And if you're on the Discord, keep your eye out for the Discord posts. And if you're not on the Discord, join the Discord today, man, so that you could be up to date on what's going on. And so that you could also lend your voice to what we do here with Shoot the Breeze. With that said, Buana, Shoot the Breeze topic number 1 says, will the Afrikaners be the face of apartheid or a new wave of American racial segregationism in the 21st century? What say you to it?
Okay, so the Afrikaners have never stopped being the face of apartheid. They've never stopped being the face of apartheid. I just had a discussion earlier with Kofi and a guy from South Africa, a black guy from South Africa. His name is Kano, I think. Kano. We just had a discussion, particularly about these kinds of issues. So the white South African boys, has never stopped being the face of apartheid. So the fact that they're going to be the face of segregation in the 21st century, I think that the message is clear. Trump has decided the kind of immigrants he wants to come into the country. And as you mentioned before, because one of the things that he's practicing pan-Europeanism. And I expect him to practice pan-Europeanism. He's supposed to practice pan-Europeanism. Now, the Americans will have to decide, black, white, Chinese, Asians, all the people in concern. They need to decide whether their leader could fully practice pan-Europeanism while they pay taxes to that government. They need to decide that. But Trump is just practicing outright pan-Europeanism. He's importing white immigrants to the country. And I was going to say, where is FBA? Where is ADOS? And you skillfully mentioned that there was one ADOS who say she don't mind them coming to the country. They expect the South African boys to practice what they practice, which is a cop-out to just continuously attack non-black, non-white immigrants coming into the country. It's a cowardly kind of thing, and just trying to shy away from that discussion, because the pressure should always be on the non-black, non-white folks. Attack the people who look just like you. Don't attack anyone else. It's just a cowardly act. But I really focus on, where is FBA? Where is ADOS? She said, I expect them to undermine us. Well, what does the Mississippi farmers, because they farmers in Mississippi. So if these South African boys are South African farmers, and he's sending them to Mississippi, the Mississippi has had a long discussion, especially the black farmers, in terms of not being permitted to get land and opportunity and having land taken away from them. And these are the so-called descendants of the slaves. What do they have to say about it? Because they're going to be undermined. Because this government is going to grant these guys all the tangibles that FBA speaks of and ADO speaks of. Where are they in this thing, in what's going on right now? Where is, what's the lady's name, the ADO's lady? I can't remember her name now. Where is she? Where is Tariq Nasheed? Bring them out. Give them on Front Street. We want to see what they have to say about these things. They're quiet as church mouses. Quiet as church mouses. You know why? Because they've already accepted their payments, and they've already misinformed and disinformed many ignorant black people in America. And they're quiet as church mouses while this man practicing pan-Europeanism. And the fool was on the platform talking about pan-Africanism is dead. She is quiet as a church mouse right now, talking about tangibles. This Trump is giving all the tangibles to the immigrant rights feathers. Where are these people's voices now? They're cowards. But sorry for yelling, Coco. I'm usually calm. But I'll leave it to. I guess someone else is on, but I'll leave it for someone else to go.
No, I like the passion there. It's very daunting how much energy is had for black foreigners in America, but with these white foreigners who are historically white racists, it is very interesting that you'll just lay down and accept what they bring in, but you claim that black foreigners dislike you and they try to undermine you. Well, what do you think is going to happen with these guys? They will undermine you, and they have the president-elect helping them to do it. That's crazy. Black Steel says that he's almost here. So I appreciate that, Black Steel. And again, Juan, I appreciate you hanging out with me tonight until you gotta go. So I do appreciate it.
We got
In the meantime, let's introduce our boy MG2. Yes, sir.
Hey,
MG2, how are you this week?
Always good. Peace. Always good to listen to you guys. Buana, I always enjoy listening to you. First and foremost is I'm hoping, and putting out the good vibes for your health, for you and your father. That's more important than anything at this point.
Appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you, man. I mean, I listen as much as I can to as many of our folks, just to, because there's so much that I think, for lack of a better term, we definitely have, we've definitely been impacted by, as Dr. Amos Wilson would say, demonic spirits. But when you ask the subject about what these foreigners, for lack of a better term, these Boers, these apartheidists, and will that be a new racial segregation? Well, I mean, their segregation has never really left. I mean, it's always been this way. A lot of times people are looking at the 60 roaches that they brought in, and they're not really recognizing that the same ones that backed their so-called presidents for the last 3 administrations were all for apartheidist Boers. This so-called tech industry was basically built, whether it's Peter Thiel, Roland Botha, David Sachs, whether it's Elon Musk, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's been, and many that got bailed out during the regional banking crisis, and that was under Biden. Many of those individuals were also quote unquote Afrikaners. So it's, without a doubt, a lot of folks think that this is kind of new. This is, basically they're just getting what they paid for. And it reminds me of a story that once upon a time, there was this one house, and the house was very clean. I mean, there was immaculate. The people, they would dance, sing, everything was all good. They had no problems. They loved each other. They admired. And what happened is there was something that came through this neighborhood, and they wanted to. They didn't have a place to live. Now, these individuals didn't have a place to live, but they were just, they were very vile. They would take things. They were very unclean. It didn't matter what it is. So they went into that house and disrupted the house. I mean, they stole things from the house. They made the house dirty. I mean, basically, anything that you could see as a so-called neighbor, and they were neighborly, but they came as they thought they were neighbors. Anyone that would think in terms of something that was the most unneighborly thing that would ever happen, that's what these foreigners did, for lack of a better term. They completely sold the house. Then what they did is they went, and all the stuff that they took or anything that they could ransack, they went across a couple of blocks away and built their own, or else had their own homes in their own neighborhoods built. So what happened is some of the individuals that were in the original house, unfortunately, ended up, whether they were kidnapped or whether they went there and begged to be there, whatever, they ended up in the house of these really dirty individuals. I mean, we're talking, complete degenerates. So what happened, is these guys got accustomed to living amongst these degenerates, and there were a lot of roaches and this and that. That's just how they are. That's what, how they live. And so what happened was the degenerate said, hey, do we have any more things we could take? matter of fact, we're going to take all the roaches away from the original house that we stole everything from, and we hurt, we ransacked it. We even want our roaches. And they went in and they said, hey, we'll pay for any roach to come in. Matter of fact, they left the food out. They did everything in order to drive those roaches back to square zero, because that's what these degenerates do. Well, unfortunately, the individuals who were previously of a clean house, they got so accustomed to living amongst roaches that they didn't have any problem with these roaches coming into this degenerate's house. Even though the degenerate might have stolen this new house or whatever, it didn't matter. They felt so comfortable with it that they felt that it was normalized. But the original house had a chance to start getting clean. Matter of fact, the original house went and got a couple of Mossberg shotguns and a couple of ARs, and they decided some AKs and said, we'll never let our houses be infected or infested by degenerates and roaches ever again. The other folks that became so accommodated to living in the degenerate's house of roaches will never go to a clean house. What I mean by that is, clearly with these degenerate roaches that they call Boers or Afrikaners, I hope that Donald Trump gets all of them. I hope that he empties out Azania, all of Africa. We're talking from Namibia to Zimbabwe to Botswana. I hope that they get rid of them all and send them all. I don't care where they send them, as long as they're off the African continent and out of Caribbean territories. Let them go ahead and occupy Detroit. Let them occupy LA. I could care less. Because what's happening is Africa's getting rid of those original roaches. And those roaches are going to come back home. It's like a homing pigeon. It's going to go right back to its source. And the thing is, anyone that's felt comfortable living amongst degenerates, we just call them FBA and ADOS and black celebrities and preachers and politicians and entertainers and athletes and Reverend Chickenbone, those that felt very comfortable living around these roaches, they'll never ever know what a clean house like Africa could be. Once Africa gets its AKs and gets its nukes and gets everything else, it will never allow roaches or degenerates to occupy its soil again. So in terms of this racial segregation, to make a long story long, I am so glad Donald Trump's doing what he's doing, and I inspire him to continue and accelerate it like there's none other, because that should inspire those who want to live in a clean house to go back to the clean house and protect it so it'll never be dirty again. I'll pass the mic. Thank you there.
Appreciate that, MG2. Hang around with us for a bit if you can. Trigger Happy 262 Plus in the chat said previously that he hoped that Trump can take all Boers from RSA. So he pretty much echoes your thoughts as well, MG2, and I'm sure for the same reasons as well. Shout out to Brother Bakari, BBN Black Business Network, saying peace and Black African power. Shout out to you. As he promised, Black Steel is here. Black Steel, how are you this week?
I'm a man of my word.
Yes, sir.
How you doing, Coco?
How are you?
I'm doing all right, man. I can't complain. Everything good on the home front? How's your family doing?
I'm hanging in there.
All right, man. It's good to hear.
He's recovering. He's recovering. So thanks for asking. Black Steel, Afrikaners, are they going to be the face of apartheid or the new wave of American racial segregationism?
I think a lot of people have already touched on the fact that they've always been the face of apartheid. They haven't changed. America is just trying to rebrand its racial segregation. Couple things about this. First of all, a lot of this is in response to South Africa's petition before the World Court, for the International Court of Justice, accusing Israel for the crime of genocide, right? So it was South Africa who initially brought the case to the International Criminal Court, right? Which is the judgment arm of the United Nations. So South Africa started that petition and formally accused Israel of genocide. And they also accused the United States of being complicit in the genocide of the Palestinians. So it is more than funny to me to hear President Donald Trump talk about a genocide in South Africa when he is actively and enthusiastically supporting a genocide of Palestinians today. Just 2 days, in the past 2 days, they've already murdered 300 people. And they could not do this without the weapons and the bombs supplied to it by the United States. So the hypocrisy of this cracker to sit up here and talk about genocide of white South Africans who are in reality the most privileged group of South Africans. They are only, what, 7% of the population, and they still control the majority of the wealth. So what South Africa is doing is merely giving back to African people what these white colonizers have stolen. So for them to call it a genocide is absolutely gut-busting hilarious to me. But I'm not surprised at the hypocrisy of these of the European, of white Americans, because if we could so quickly forget that the United States fast-tracked white Ukrainians who actually were Nazis. So here they are bringing in white Ukrainians to the United States, and they bypassed all the Black and Latino refugees, people who have a legit claim to refugee status. The United States is a white settler colony. And to Buana's point, this is Donald Trump practicing pan-Europeanism. This is him practicing white nationalism. He has already said in his own words, he called African nations shithole countries. And he lamented the fact that why is it that we don't get more immigrants from Western Europe? Why don't we have more people coming from Norway and Denmark? All right. So his desire to see more white immigration is a way to offset the crisis that white people are currently having, especially in the United States, when their birth rate is below replacement level. So the idea that we can bring in more white people to bolster up our numbers, because at this point in time, there are not enough white babies being born. So this whole idea is that, hey, this is the old strategy. This is not anything new. This is what white people have always done, right? When they're in fear of a demographic crisis, they'll bring in white people, more white immigrants. So, and what happens is that people who were previously not considered white, once they cross the Atlantic, they then become white because they need them to bolster their numbers. I talked about this before. Irish people in the 1800s, Irish were not considered white. They come to America, they get mistreated. Okay, now we need them. The immigrants coming. Now you're white. Italians were not considered white. Okay, now they're white. They were considered to be swarthy. You know, Italians were lynched. There was a famous case where 11 Italians were lynched in Louisiana at one point. Now all of a sudden, boom, Italians are white. You know, Southern Europeans, Greeks, Albanians, Slavic people. Oh, now they're white. Now, once they come to America, now they're white. So the idea that Trump is bringing these people over is not surprising. I don't know if they're going to become the new face of apartheid. They may very well have them replace the labor that was being done by the immigrant population. You know, they want to send all the immigrants home. They want to send the Mexicans and everybody else back out the country. So maybe these Afrikaners, since they're farmers, they can get out here and pick these strawberries. They can get out here and work on these people's roofs if that's what they really want them to do. But the question is, are they going to work for the low wages and the hard hours that these Latinos, these Mexicans, and these Haitian people have been doing? Because America needs immigrants to survive. Again, who's working in the slaughterhouses? Who's working in the meat packing industry? It's mostly immigrants. But they don't want these immigrants. They want the ones that look like them because they're fear of their being outnumbered, which they are being outnumbered. So this is just a reaction. Again, Donald Trump is a white supremacist. He's a white nationalist. His administration is full of white nationalists. FBA is a anti-African hate group, which I am even further convinced that 80% of them are white people behind those screens, right? And the other 20% are self-hating coons. I've never seen the FBA march. I've never seen an ADOS community outreach group. They're not feeding kids. They're not trying to do stuff for the community. They sit online and they talk shit about other Black people. Meanwhile, this country that ADOS is so proud of, this America they love so much. I haven't heard them say a peep about Trump and his attempts to destroy the 14th Amendment, his attacks on the judiciary. But y'all love America though. So what it really reveals to me, they've always been an anti-African hate group. Some ADOS lawyer, whatever the fuck, was talking about reparations. And it was so funny. He didn't want reparations from Spain or Britain or France. He wanted reparations from the African nations that sold us into slavery. And I told him it was a dumb idea. How are you going to sit up here and go? So the people you want to get money from is not from Spain, not from France, not from Great Britain. You want to go after what the rum and the muskets that the African middlemen were taking. But it revealed the reality is that these people hate Africans. They hate being black. They want to be American, and you can't be American. America and black is this country hates black people. Always has. So they have to erase their original sin, which is of being black, which is to be anti-African. They want to go attack other African people. But yeah, I'm not surprised by this. This is not even even a shock to me. I mean, again, he brought in the Ukrainians earlier in this a couple of years ago. So the idea of fast tracking white immigrants while removing black immigrants like Haitians. A Haitian woman recently died not too long ago in ICE custody. You know how you see on the news, ICE just jumping people in the street and dragging them off to God knows where. This is ethnic cleansing. That's all it is. This is ethnic cleansing for a white ethno state. That's it, and that's all. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Black Steel. Black Steel. If they get the people who what some of the FBA people don't understand, and you're an educator, so I need you to educate some people. If they get rid of the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution, the FBA people thinking in their minds, oh, they're gonna get rid of all these ugly African and Caribbean tethers. But don't they know? But if you get rid of the 14th Amendment, you are not a citizen either. You ain't a citizen either. You get rid of the tethers, but that means you are not a citizen either.
Exactly.
Lord have mercy. I don't understand, man. Maybe it's me. Am I going crazy?
No.
You are an American person. You're supposed to know these things. You're supposed to know that. If you get rid of the 14th, you get rid of yourself too. You killing yourself. Yeah, Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy. Anyway,
is that the average American does not read above a 6th grade level, right? 54% of people in this country don't read above a 6th grade level, right? So I'm not surprised at all that this ADOS FBA belief that they're going to get rid of these dirty immigrants. Or what do they say? They say that, oh, well, the 14th Amendment, birthright citizenship was meant for the children of slaves. It was never meant for these illegal immigrants and all this other stuff. And I don't know why these people think that they're special, right? You really think white people can tell the difference between an African and someone who was born in the United States? What was the brother who got killed in his home? Botham Jean, the man who was eating ice cream in his house, got killed by a white cop. He was from the Caribbean. You think that lady stopped and say, "Oh, where are you from? You from St. Vincent? Okay, I won't kill you." No. Or the Congolese immigrant man who was shot in the back of his head, or the black man who back in the 80s who was murdered by a white mob in some mainly Italian borough of New York. I think his name was Yusuf Hawkins. One of but it's ridiculous on his face, which makes me think most of them are white, and some of them are self-hating black people. There's a lot of black people who hate being black. Unfortunately, there are a lot of black people who hate themselves. But the idea that, first of all, what Trump is doing is blatantly unconstitutional. So for those of us, those who might be listening, who might not know too much about United States government, how it works, the 14th Amendment was the amendment that basically gave citizenship to those people who had been enslaved prior to the Civil War. And it was signed initially, it was done back in 1868. It gave citizenship. It enshrined due process rights. It also had an insurrection clause that where anybody who had been involved in any type of rebellion against the U.S. government could not hold office, but that one got ignored conveniently. There have been several cases throughout the Supreme Court that have further codified the 14th Amendment, mainly United States versus Wong Kim Ark, who was a Chinese person who was born in San Francisco. So he left the United States and went back to China. And on his way back to San Francisco, he was denied entry to the United States because at the time the United States had a law called the Chinese Exclusion Act, which basically excluded all people of Chinese descent from living in the country. So Mr. Wong Kim Ark took his case all the way to the Supreme Court, even though his parents were citizens of the Empire of China. Because he was born in the United States, he was a U.S. citizen. And his parents' condition did in no way relieve him of citizenship. This has been a long-standing precedent in the United States law. So Trump comes around, he signs his executive order. It immediately gets struck down as being unconstitutional. He's trying to, they put all type of injunctions in place to prevent it from being taken into effect. He wants to take it to court. And the reality is like, hey, he knows it's blatantly unconstitutional, right? In order for them to change an amendment, they have to draft a new amendment. It has to be ratified by 2/3 of the House, 2/3 of the Senate, and then approved by 3/4 of the states. That's how you change the Constitution. But Trump doesn't want to do that. He just wants to ride roughshod over it, and do what he wants to do. But again, I don't hear ADOS talking about this. What is it? Oh, I thought you guys loved America so much. But here you have a president who is just taking a piss all over the Constitution, but I don't hear you say anything. But oh my gosh, can you believe that these Jamaicans are saying that they started hip hop? Oh, it's, they're a clown show.
Well said.
Correct me if I'm wrong. And by the way, Buana had to step down to handle some business, as he mentioned earlier. But that gives me the opportunity to speak to MG2 and Black Steel as Africans in America. Do you think that this is the removal of the nail in the coffin of Africa and the final nail in the coffin of Africans, blacks in America? Do you think this is it?
You said the final nail in the coffin.
Do you think the final nail in the coffin? Yeah.
In the coffin of African, of Black Americans. You know what? I'm so glad you said that. Man, I can't say absolute it is, but one thing I could say is it might be the beginnings of, it might be in its nascent version. Right now, it's a renaissance. It's one of the most incredible renaissance that African people, especially when you're looking what's happening in the AES and other nations that are seeing, what's going on with the AES. It's literally becoming in other words, it reminds me of the last scene in the movie The Wiz, where folks were dancing after, the Wicked Witch was gone. That kind of, we're actually seeing the nail in the coffin of not only because of, in terms of the physical removal or the geopolitical removal of, Western so-called, I just call it Neanderthal power, Anglo-cracker power, whatever. We're not only seeing that, but we're also seeing the fact that others are starting to, are saying, hey, we see this Achilles heel. We're not just going to go ahead and let it live in peace. We're going to compete and destroy it. And I saw that recently when you saw what happened between India and Pakistan. Again, subjects of unfortunate colonization of Peckerwoods. You saw it when Pakistan knocked down French fighters and just took out a Russian S-400 battery today. So the thing is you're seeing the things that Western powers run on, and I talked about this just early this morning. They run on two things: intellectual property, which is nothing more than monetizing somebody else's idea, or as Dr. John Henrik Clarke said, the only thing that the crackers ever invented was the patent office. And the other rung that runs Western power is their military dominance. Okay, and the thing is, they're losing on both fronts. And when you say that this is the nail in that coffin, not just because of the ideological standpoint of, yeah, well, finally Africa can can stand up, and it's more than that. It's more to the point where folks are not only looking at it ideologically, but they're looking at it very productively in terms of, wow, okay, I'm seeing that the Achilles heel of somebody who's been on our neck for centuries. I'm seeing that real Achilles heel. Not only will I go ahead and kick them out of my country, but I'm gonna cut their heels. Okay, I'm gonna make sure that they cannot do what they did for the last 500 years again. We're seeing that with other nations. Answer Allah, we're seeing it. I mean, across the board. So the thing is when you say, is it the death of the or the nail in the coffin of Black America? I hope it is. I can't wait for it to be, because the thing is so-called Black Americans, for lack of a better term, we still, even in our lexicon, even in our euphemisms, have not accepted that we are Africans. Anytime I hear somebody talk about African American or Black American, whatever else, the thing is you have a noun and you have an adjective. And that's English language, not mine. This is their language. The thing is a noun in their language is a person, place, or thing, or something that's really tangible, and not some idiot that this homosexual Tariq Nasheed came up with. He really didn't come up with it. It was we commodity traders that called things tangible. But these FBAs call, oh, where's my tangibles? They have no clue. The thing is in English, their language, not ours, their language, it's a person, place, or thing, something you can touch, taste, smell, see, hear. It's actual physical property. Then you have in their language what's called an adjective, which actually describes that physical property. The thing is, one is abstract and one is actually definitive. One is indefinite, one is definitive. Definitive means, hey, it will not change. A chair is a chair. You can call it whatever it is, but you're going to sit on it. Indefinite is my blue, maybe your aqua. In other words, it's abstract. So the thing is, when you ask, is it the nail in the coffin for Black America? I can't wait for it to be that, because that will force us to look at the definitive of who we are, and that's Africa. That's Africans. Okay, that is not just Black folks, but I'm talking we are African. And what I mean by that is the noun, for lack of a better term, I may live in a house, I may live in a hotel room, or I may live in a condo. I'm not an African condo. Okay, I'm an African. Where you live, or I should say where you reside, does not necessarily tell you who you are, as Dr. John Henrik Clarke would say. The thing is the death and the nail in the coffin of Black America couldn't come fast enough, because what it's going to take is it will actually make us more individual collectivists, because we have no other choice, no different than what happened back in the other, for the last 500 years, or we could continue as collective individualists and die in the vine. So it's not only the nail in the coffin of the Boers and the colonists, thank God. And again, this is in its nascent form. This might take a century, but at least it's happening. But the more important thing is it's driving the folks to go back to that clean house that was invaded by roaches, and we have no other choice but to be clean Africans again. I'll pass the mic.
Well stated. Black Steel, you wanted to add anything here?
Could you repeat the question, Coco?
Yeah, the question was, I think I kind of convoluted it, but MG2 figured out what I was trying to ask. Is this the final nail in Black America or Africans in America? Meaning, like MG2 said, like, will this make Black Americans or Africans in America come together, unify, and recognize that they're Africans? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think so. And I would say we didn't come together when they were bringing in Ukrainians. We didn't come together when they were bringing in, people from the Balkans in the 90s, from Eastern Europe. We didn't unify then. What makes these Boers any different? Well, like I said about the Ukrainians, a lot of Ukrainians were straight up card-carrying Nazis, right? How are they any different from the Boers? So no, I don't think this is going to this is going to be anything that's going to be a death knell for Black America or anything like that, right? If anything, it should just lay bare.
Black Steel.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me ask this question then to you. Do you think the removal, and hopefully there's more removal, of the Boers from South Africa, do you think that will allow South Africans to unify, organize, and reclaim their power?
I hope so. I hope this is a net positive for them, right? They're Africa's the removal of the Afrikaner population is a net positive for South Africa. I say take all of them if it really boils down to it. Another white immigrant group here in the United States isn't going to impact me any more than the damn Ukrainians or the Bosnians did. A cracker is a cracker is a cracker. I'm not going to lose sleep over it. I'm still black in this racist country, but I do think it would be a benefit to South Africa. And I'm very happy for them because these Boers have been absolutely horrible. They've been a plague and a blight for 400 years to those people over there. So I'm happy that they're leaving Africa. They want to resettle them in like the Midwest. You want to take them to Iowa, Wyoming, where there's no black people. We don't got to deal with them. Fine, just put them open space in this country. Send them like Idaho, where there's like 0.2% black people. Send them to Wyoming or Montana. Let them live out there if they want to be so magnanimous to them. I don't really care, but I think it's a net positive for South Africa. That this is happening, and I think it should be an eye opener for African Americans to understand that this is a white settler colony, and ADOS is a hate group. Again, I don't think they're gonna get the picture, but I think many of us who may not have been on the conscious side may understand this.
Yeah, like Brother Bakari is saying, they're sending them to like Mississippi and Alabama. They're not sending them to those so-called white utopias that you would have mentioned. They're sending them where a lot of, if I'm not mistaken, I think the South is still heavily populated by a lot of Africans. That's what they're sending them. They're sending them down there to carry on that good old boy legacy. So the reason I asked that question that way to you, Black Steel, was I figured in my head that it would have a little bit of a seesaw effect. You bring a bunch more of these white folks, in particular these Boers, who bring that old school apartheid ideology, and that would kind of reinvigorate the South and bring back that old school, white racism. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Africans in America did really kind of come together a little bit better. If you think about like the bus boycotts and things of that nature. So I thought maybe there'll be like a rebalancing that occurs. But I guess you disagree. I think MG2 more sees it the way I was seeing it. But do you guys have any last thoughts on this problem?
I'm good.
Okay. In the chat,
Yes.
Brother Bakari's out there, like I said, BB. You have a last thought, MG?
Yeah, definitely. I have to concur with both of you guys in different ways. Here's what I mean. I am glad they're sending them, whether it's Mississippi, whether it's Georgia, whether it's DC, Philly, Detroit, LA, you name it. Because it ain't no different than the fact that these stipends that Vietnamese have gotten when they, quote unquote, were so-called refugees, and they, moved black folks out, and black folks had, that used to live in certain areas, no different than what Koreans, Hispanics, or anyone else did. The thing is sooner or later, those of us who do have what's called a clue will know exactly, hey, United States is not a country, it's a flea market. It's one big Walmart. Even Donald Trump, something I've been telling folks, in social media for over a decade. Now Donald Trump even said it the other day, hey, it's a department store. In other words, those who still look at this as their home and not just where they reside, they deserve to go ahead and unfortunately suffer the effects of someone who wants to make a home in a Walmart. The thing is they're sending, and hopefully they will continue to send these roaches to infect all corners of the United States, while we go ahead and build what's ours back where we should have been in the first place, and that's back home in Africa. Africa's one, and I'm talking all over African nations. That includes Caribbean. The thing is it's not just the fact that, oh, they're sending them here now. What are they going to do to us? My thing is, I don't care where they go. As long as they leave Africa, they could go anywhere. Okay, as long as they're not around where we should be. We should not be as like mice in a snake den. We should not be in a stolen territory, a stolen people in a stolen territory by thieves, by murderers, by rapists. We should be where we were actually our original, for lack of a better term, as Dr. Marimba Ani would say, our silly is. So therefore, I have to concur with you both. Hey, if they keep sending them, hey, let me know, and I'll go ahead and shoot. If I have to promote it and jump around and have a celebration, let it happen. My thing is, those who are very intelligent as African people know when they leave, it's our opportunity to build Africa greater than anything than it's ever been. That's if we want to do that. I'll pass the mic.
Well said stuff there, MG2. Thank you for that. Let's go to Shooter Briefs topic number 2. Shooter Briefs topic number 2 says, Trump administration making plans to have migrants deported to Rwanda. This came with a link that's going to take us to X. There's a post from Larry Madowo. He says, you may be deported from America and sent to Rwanda, even if you're not from there. Quote unquote, illegal aliens could be heading to Africa soon. President Kagame's government is in talks with the Trump administration to accept the, quote, most despicable human beings, end quote, as a favor to the U.S. This comes with a video, about 2.5 minutes. We'll watch it and we'll discuss it.
Rwanda now confirming that it is ready to take in the despicable human beings that the United States is removing from the country. That's what the Trump administration calls these undocumented migrants that have been sent to places like El Salvador and Panama. And Rwanda's foreign minister said they're still in early talks. So if this pans out, it will not be the first time that Rwanda has done something like this. It's called migrant offshoring and has a lot of criticism in the human rights space. In the case of the UK deal, which we covered about 2 years ago, we went to Kigali and saw the facilities, the hostel where these migrants will be kept. Rwanda will be paid about $500,000 over 5 years and another £20,000 for every successful migrant that was sent to Rwanda. That eventually happened, and Prime Minister Keir Starmer canceled that when he came into power. But it looks like this time the Americans are serious about sending people overseas, and Rwanda is ready to take them in. Listen to the foreign minister.
We are in talks with USA. You know, even before we were in talks with the UK, it's not a new thing for us. And even apart from the UK, you know, we received migrants who had been trapped in Libya. I would say that's the spirit we are in, of giving chance to migrants who are in trouble across the world. So we are in talks with the USA. It's not finalized yet for us to say this is how it will turn out, but talks are taking place. And once they are concluded, we'll inform you. It is in its early stages.
Why would the U.S. send undocumented migrants to Rwanda thousands of kilometers away? It's a long way to go, but that is the point. Because as Secretary of State Marco Rubio said at a cabinet meeting on Wednesday, they're asking countries to take the despicable human beings as a favor to the U.S. And he also added that they want to send them as far as possible from the U.S. because they can't come back over the border. So this is why Rwanda is an attractive proposition. And Rwanda needs the United States to help in this conflict it has in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, where the DRC accuses it of arming the M23 rebels there, and the U.S. has made some efforts to mediate there. They signed a declaration of principles recently, so you can see why this is a quid pro quo for Rwanda and the U.S., and if it does pan out, this would be quite an interesting one, and certainly the furthest that undocumented migrants have been sent from the U.S. Zane, Vienna?
Yeah, those comments by Secretary of State Marco Rubio really did raise a lot of eyebrows last week when he talked about sending America's most despicable human beings to other countries and essentially saying, hey, can you do us a favor by taking them off our hands for us? Larry Meadow, live for us there. Thank you.
This is very interesting. Like Trigger Happy in the chat said, how many times are Rwanda putting these convoys? Just tells you that Kagame is never credible if he even allows himself to be bossed around. Him being bossed around is due to his status of serving other countries and their interests. This is wild stuff. While America is trying to clean up its country of certain types of criminals, much less certain types of people, you're going to accept those people into your country. You're already having problems. You're already having conflicts in the eastern part of your country and all that stuff. That's some wild, wild stuff. Let me check to see if there's more to this post, if it's a thread or not. It looks like it's a little bit of a thread. So I'm going to play this next video. Larry Meadow says, why would Rwanda accept deportees from America? It's called migrant offshoring. And I explained why 2 years ago when it did a similar deal with the UK. So this is a 3-minute video. We'll watch it and then we'll discuss everything.
These are the final touches at Hope Hostel in Kigali before the first migrants deported from the UK arrive. And so this is the new place waiting for the migrants. Building that until we house the young survivors of the Rwandan genocide has a new purpose. This newly renovated hostel can host up to 100 people, 2 to a room, and sharing communal bathrooms. So this is one sample room.
Yes, this is the one sample room for the first floor. Amenities.
It's got towels, it's got an iron box, it's got a change of sheets.
Yes.
This is where the migrants will live under the watchful eye of Rwandan authorities. The home is not luxurious, but the Rwandan government says the migrants will be free here, not in detention like in the UK. Officials also promise support for at least or until they're self-sufficient. But the plan has been widely criticized by many refugee rights groups in the UK, internationally, and here in Rwanda. The main opposition party here says Rwanda shouldn't have to bear the UK's burden.
It is their responsibility.
So you think the UK is violating its international obligations by passing that off to Rwanda?
Yes. And we don't see why. We are still struggling over having enough infrastructure, electricity, water, roads, schools, hospitals. We are not the same like UK. We have to think twice.
Rwanda and the UK expect this migrant scheme to disrupt the business of people smugglers. But many international bodies, even the UK, rank Rwanda poorly on some human rights indicators. Critics also say accepting migrants rich countries don't want is cruel and inhumane.
It's cruel and it's inhumane that people are dying in the desert, trying to cross the desert, making these dangerous journeys, drowning in the Mediterranean. We're interested in protecting vulnerable people, and this has been our philosophy for the last 30 years.
We have fast processing.
Rwanda has also welcomed refugees and asylum seekers evacuated from Libya after unsuccessfully trying to cross to Europe. Orientation has started for the latest arrivals at the Gashora Emergency Transit Center. They're mostly from the Horn of Africa. How do you compare the conditions in the 4 years you spent in Libya and here in Rwanda?
Actually, it is so difficult to compare it because we can say from hell to heaven.
Being in Libya to Rwanda is like coming from hell to heaven.
Yeah.
Zeman is grateful for the peace and freedom in Rwanda, but it's still not his destination of choice. None of the people we spoke to here wanted to stay, even though it's one of the options. Your final goal is still to go to Europe.
Yeah.
Rwanda has become the global market leader in migrant offshoring. After the UK scheme, a deal with Denmark is in the works to help clean up Rwanda's image internationally, but some accuse it of trying to paint over a dark reputation.
Wow, very interesting. Very, very interesting. in the chat, Marcus Garvey is the way. What's up, sis? She says, good night. Rwanda is gorgeous. Send me. Thanks for being here. Marcus Garvey is the way. Also, I think I mentioned shout out to Provide Triggers for Evolution and to the Revolutionary Matron, who's also out there in the chat as well. Shooter Breeze Topic number 2 says Trump administration making plans to have migrants deported to Rwanda. Black Steel, what are your thoughts on that?
Black people, this is for us. Black American, this is for us. You think this Trump administration is bothering to see whether or not people are citizens or not? They've already removed 2 children who were born in the United States, U.S. citizens. They've removed them to Cuba or Honduras. I forgot which country, but there were 2 children. One was 4, one was 2, U.S. citizens. This is for black people. This is for black people. Trump said himself when he was talking to the president of El Salvador, the one who calls himself the world's coolest dictator, right? Trump was heard saying homegrowns are next, right? He wants to remove those he considers to be undesirable, right? So El Salvador is for the Latinos. Rwanda is for the black people. It's for the Africans, the Haitians, and they don't want back to Haiti or Rwanda, and those African Americans who think that their citizenship protects them somehow. This is for us. Just to let you know, this is for Black Americans who may protest against Trump's policies, who may be, he's always talking about DEI and everything else. This is for us. This is truly for us. I think it's sad that Rwanda would be engaged in this type of behavior, but I'm not surprised at Kagame. I mean, look what he's doing in the Congo right now. I'm not even shocked or appalled that anything. I mean, I'm appalled, but I'm not shocked that this is the behavior that Rwanda, which is truly a puppet of the United States. I think they said Rwanda was the Israel of Africa. The United States gives them money and weapons to commit atrocities and help destabilize the region. Or Kenya too, but I know it was Rwanda, right? That they're used to destabilize the region, so that way multinational corporations can go in there and exploit the resources of Africa. And this is what Rwanda is doing. It's crazy to me how the UK, Great Britain, which colonized damn near 3/4 of the world, has a problem with people coming to Great Britain. So it's okay when you crackers can go to Africa and India and Australia and Canada and Jamaica and all over the world. But God forbid you got some people who you colonized actually come back to your green and pleasant land, as they call it. Fuck you. It's always crazy to me how now these people who set up here and colonized the world, who sent their people all over the world, but when it comes back to them, oh no, we got to send them somewhere. They can't stay here. Man, come on. Let's be real. It's so funny to me. But yeah, shame on Rwanda for even considering this. It's quite shameful. But yeah, this is definitely for Black Americans. The Trump administration has already shown they don't care about laws. They don't care about citizenship. They don't care about your rights. Trump, I think he posted on Twitter, he said, or X or whatever the fuck it's called, that he who does things to save his country commits no crime. So he's already justified it in his mind. He's already ignored several court orders. He's ignored a 9-0 Supreme Court decision. Don't think that Black American citizenship or our role in this country, we fought in every war since the revolution, blah, 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 whatever. Don't think that's going to protect us when these white supremacists want to get us up out of here. And another thing too, don't think this is over when Trump leaves. It's not. But usually, many times, the actions of a president reverberate throughout time. And it could take years to show the effects of it. We're still dealing with stuff that Ronald Reagan has done. And don't think if we get a Democratic president in place that he's going to reverse all of this. and we're not going to send people to El Salvador or Rwanda anymore. In fact, Joe Biden, when he was president, he kicked out more Haitians than Trump did. But because it was a Democratic president, we didn't really make any noise about it. Remember the whole debacle about the kids being encaged at the border? That was still going on under Biden. Nobody said anything. So what happens is that when we have that back, when we get if we get a Democratic president again, it's not going to change anything. This is the new America. It is what it is. But yeah, I don't think Rwanda should be participating in this type of foolishness at all. This is ridiculous on their part. All right, I'll leave it there. Thanks.
I appreciate that, Black. So, as you were saying, this is for us. This is for us. It reminded me of Marcus Garvey's quote. Essentially, if you're not of any use in America, then you'll be of no use in Africa. If you're, so I think about that in terms of this, especially for like hardened criminals, hardened American criminals, who are Black, who are African, being sent to these places in the continent. It's clearly to destabilize, I would guess, right, MG2?
Well, I'm kind of, for lack of a better term, I have to look at this with a dual, for lack of a better term, perspective. Anytime when you have what's called immigration anywhere, that's basically a vetting process. Nations need immigration, whether they want it or not. They need it. Otherwise, they especially Westernized powers. If you end up with a demographic like South Korea, Japan, Northern, Western Europe, what's China's going through, they need immigration. What it is the type of immigration that they need. Here's what I mean. They don't want competitive age immigration, which means any male over the age of maybe 15. They don't want that. That's too competitive. Women and young children, that represents a demographic that's going to make your economy and make your entire environment more competitive, not just in the first generation, but like 10 generations out there. So that's what this immigration, whole situation is about. It's a big vetting process. But what I have problem with, especially with Rwanda, is who is being let in. See, if it's African people, and I'm talking us Black folk, Africans, then I could say, okay, let me see how this goes. Unfortunately, that's a gateway to letting in Europeans or Ukrainians, is it real, Boers and everything else. And that's the problem I have, which I see Kagame and others have definitely adopted. Basically it's a paycheck. It's like, Yasa, Masa, I do what you want, just let me go ahead and buy a New Testament. That's where, unfortunately, these so-called African leaders, they do. There isn't a leadership. When I see this immigration, for lack of a better term, and I'm glad that Black still brought something up. I've been telling folks this for a long time, for over the last decade and 2 decades now, ever before social media was ever out. Basically, what you had is Europe had colonized the world, okay, through destruction, through exploitation, molestation, you name it. The world, because of its demographic, has grown more than Europeans who are dying. Again, that vetting process. Now the world is colonizing Europe in a way Europe cannot handle, whether it's through their technologies, like I brought up with China earlier, or whether it's through their militarism, like Ansar Allah, or even if it's with the bodies, shall we say what they call Hispanics and folks that are dying in the Mediterranean. The world is now recolonizing. In other words, it's not like they want to. It's like because of the disruption that Europeans have caused. Remember, you're dealing with a so-called race. We're talking Peckerwoods that have molested, conquered, destroyed, manipulated, altered everything from the smallest, which is the atom, to outer space and everything in between. There is nothing sacred and nothing safe from a European. So the thing is now the world is, because of the disruption, is now something that Europe cannot handle. That's why Britain, and I don't call them great. That's one thing I'll never call these bastards. The Britain and all UK or whatever. That's why they're like, we can't let them in, because now they're being colonized. But here's the other kicker. I've been telling folks for over a decade now, since like 2002, that basically when George Bush, this is even before, this is when George Bush was in office, he came out with this thing called extraordinary rendition. And that was, again, another vetting process, kicking out the competitive age demographic, whereas you allow those that make you more competitive. What makes you competitive is not young men in your soil. What makes you competitive as a demographic are young childbearing women and young children, because that builds those numbers of that middle class. Basically, Western culture is a Ponzi scheme. Okay, you pay for whoever's, whoever the next generation is going to pay for this one. That's all it is, and they need that Ponzi scheme to continue. So what happened is extraordinary rendition was a vetting process in order to get rid of competitive age males. At the time, they called them Arabs and Al Qaeda and all this other stuff. In other words, they were taking them over to black sites, what they call black sites in Poland, Romania, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Colombia. It didn't matter where it was. And it was basically a way that United States had franchised its security apparatus. We call them prisons. It was a prison franchising basically mechanism. And anyone that knows Western economy or Western culture, or any, the way that that economy normally works is you take natural resource, you industrialize that natural resource, then you commoditize the product, and then you franchise the organization. They did it with us, called slaves. Now they're doing it with Big Macs, with cows, and with coltan, calling them iPads. It's the same thing. But what they did is they franchised this industrialized commodity called prisons. Okay, it started from slaves, then it ended up with the prison, and then they commoditized it, and that's why you could bet on on prison stocks, and now it's franchised. And the franchising of that enslavement mechanism that we now call prison industrial complex is extraordinary rendition. And so, as I have to give kudos again to Black Steel, he was right on the money when basically what they're doing, it's not just a Donald Trump thing. This was something that was put into play way before he was out. We're talking Jimmy Carter's Project 2000. This was something that was back even before, when Nixon had an issue with Vietnam. What they are doing is they found that we have a monetized, for lack of a better term, a zero-sum game in terms of something that makes money, and that's called their prison system. Back then, we just called it slavery and Jim Crow. But this system this institution is a moneymaker. Their stocks never go down. So the thing is when they're over capacity, which is what's happening in terms of geographically, what's happening to Western nations is an overcapacity into this framework of franchising their slave system called prisons. George Bush comes out and calls it extraordinary rendition. So that's why you have Guantanamo Bay. That was extraordinary rendition. That's why you have all these other prisons in Eastern Europe that are still being occupied by Arabs. Well, what does Donald Trump say? Oh, wow, it's not just him. Again, a lot of folks, they center things on him. The guy doesn't know, he couldn't spell his name on a good day. What it is it's the United States' entire infrastructure that said, hey, we're losing on the only two things that actually make us money, and that's the security apparatus and intellectual property. We need to make money. Oh yeah, we could franchise this no different than we did enslaved Africans. Now, unfortunately, it's because of how we've adopted European so-called culture, which is a death cult. The thing is now this money-making apparatus under Donald Trump's watch is called exporting the ones that we don't want. And you're just, you're going to see, as I told folks 20 years ago, you're going to see Pookie and Ray Ray having to make a collect call from Kazakhstan saying, because I shot someone or I jaywalked, I'm doing time over here in Uzbekistan. And Uzbekistan, it's a money-making enterprise. Anyone that knows security apparatus knows that their stocks don't go down. And all the stocks that actually are the substructure and the ancillary, whether it's Band-Aids or food, they all make money on that enslavement mechanism called prisons. So the thing is, Kazakhstan will make money because when you franchise, you globalize. And that, in other words, it's a globalization of the slave system, prison industrial complex. I told folks 20 years ago, and you're going to experience it on steroids now because Donald Trump, for lack of a better term, or that office has no accountability to their courts because their real government is their courts. Remember, he put that court together, where him and Mitch McConnell. So clearly, because of the vacuum of economic, or I should say, because of the economic strife that Western culture is in, that is only the natural progression that they're saying we need a hustle and we need a hustle bad. How are we going to do it? Let's send Rondell, Tanisha, Shaquan, and everyone else to El Salvador. The ones we can't send there, we'll send over to Rwanda. And if Libya has any more room, we'll send them out there because they will make money. And then They're getting rid of the competitive demographic they don't want in the first place. And in the meantime, what do they bring in? They bring in Boers, Ukrainians, Afghani, and anyone else who is, i.e., that competitive demographic. This is it again. This is a Thucydides trap, and many of our folks are so blissfully unaware, knowing that this is not a country. Western society is not a country. All it is one big market structure. That's why they call it the free market environment. It is not a place to live. It's a place where individuals reside, repatriate their talent, their technologies, their resource back home, and make them their own homes more competitive. Those of us who still think this is a place we can live need their heads examined, because pretty soon they won't have any other time left in order to do it. Anyways, I'll pass the mic.
Good stuff, MG2. Let me go back quickly to Black Steel. Black Steel, if you were corresponding, if you were writing a letter, if you will, to Kagame, telling him this is a bad idea, what would your key points be in that letter as a Pan-African? What would your key points be to Kagame not to do this?
As a Pan-Africanist, I would say that, what Trump is doing is a violation of international law, right? It's a violation of international law, international norms, and he is using you, right, as a dumping ground for those that he considers to be less desirable or undesirable, right? As a man of Africa, as a man from Africa who lives on the continent, right? You should not be beholden to the Western interests, is what I would say. And think about your African brothers and sisters that are going to be impacted by this. So to me, that's how I would just break it down to, like, this is for your sovereignty as a nation, right? You can't be the U.S.'s lapdog. But the problem is that he knows if he tries to break away, they'll just kill him, like they did with so many of our leaders, which what they want to do to Traore, and have not succeeded and failed to do. But I'm just saying that overall, he's got to understand that he's being used. And the minute he is no longer useful, he will be removed. It's better to live on your feet than die on your die on your feet and live on your knees, man. Have some self-respect. They've been using this man for decades. So that's what I would say.
Is there any last thought? Yes, sir.
Yes.
Go ahead, MG2.
I'm so glad Black Steel said, but I mean, Black Steel, I am just totally enthralled. Thank you so much. I mean, because you're giving me so many ideas. One letter that I would give to Paul Kagame, I wish I could call him a leader, but he's more of a pleader. There's a statement that individuals say that I really have problem with, and it says, one man's trash is another man's treasure. I don't think any one of you guys would allow me to do this, because I just took out the trash earlier today. I don't think you would allow me to put it in your living room and you expect it to become treasure. Now, I'm not saying that these quote unquote refugees or immigrants or whatever they're doing to export are trash. Like I said, if they're African people that are in need and have talent and skills and are productive, I'm like, hey, Paul Kagame, bring them in. Again, if they're productive Africans and not trash. But again, that's a unfortunate slow crawl into Europe sending out the real trash, which is everything from crackers to Arabs and everyone else. The thing is, as I would caution and send that letter to Paul Kagame to say, be careful what you wish for. In other words, if you are one man who's taken someone else's trash and making it treasure, you better be careful, because it may be you who are the trash in the first place. Okay, I'll pass the mic there, Koku. Thank you so much.
No problem. Marcus Garvey is the way in the chat said, be careful of propaganda. He said, we believe everything bad we hear about each other. Do not forget propaganda against us. I wasn't quite sure what the statement was referring to. I don't know if you guys picked up on what it was, but I tried to get her to come up, but she didn't come up for this one. So hopefully next time. Trigavi 262 Plus says, to me, it's somewhat an inevitability that Europe will slowly become non-white But even then, it's a self-inflicted thing. If white people didn't want this, don't colonize their work. Don't colonize other people's world, I guess. With that said, for time's sake, let's go to Shoot the Breeze, topic number 3 tonight. Make sure you guys hit the like button for me. Share the show if you will. Let others know that you tune in to Shoot the Breeze on a Saturday night. And check out the other shows too. Make sure you're checking out Brother Bakari, the Forecast Radio, the Matron, who's doing consistent work every week, and Kofi, the Black Critic, as well as some of the other guys. Should read sub number 3 says, crash out of the year, or was he justified? I think I know what this is about. This is an interesting one. Let me make sure I share my screen with you guys. There we go. So we'll watch this video. It's short, 3 minutes, and then we'll discuss it.
Killed by a car on Friday, and what police say was an intentional act is now identified. The Hamilton County Sheriff's Office says Larry Henderson was a recently retired deputy with 33 years of experience with the Sheriff's Office. Henderson served in various units from the dive team and SWAT to the FBI task force. Sheriff Charmaine McGuffey announcing today that Henderson's badge number 129 will be retired. Local 12's Chris Arnold is here tonight. And Chris, it's very clear that the support for Henderson continues to grow.
You know, that's right, Dwayne. What started as a small memorial for Henderson where he was hit and killed has grown quite a bit over the weekend. I saw a handful of people come by this afternoon to lay flowers down and pay their respects to the fallen deputy.
It broke my heart. It's a tragedy.
It's a growing memorial at the corner of Martin Luther King Jr. and Burnett Woods Drive. Flowers, candles, and even handwritten cards, all showing support for retired Hamilton County Sheriff's Deputy Larry Henderson.
A group of coworkers and I got together and collected some money so that we could bring some more flowers and bring some more life to this memorial and make sure that everyone who's driving by knows that he was well supported.
Ward Heilbronner didn't know Deputy Henderson personally, but says he's a friend and coworker of Henderson's son.
I just know that his dad had to be a heck of a guy and a wonderful person just through, what his son is.
Sheriff Charmaine McGuffey said in a statement on Sunday that Henderson trained divisions of the sheriff's office that included hundreds of deputy sheriffs. She says his ability to relate to and touch officers' lives was extraordinary. Henderson was hit and killed Friday while serving on a traffic detail for UC's graduation ceremony. Cincinnati Police Chief Teresa Thigi assured the public a thorough and accurate investigation would be done.
And I believe that it will be. In situations like this, it has to be, in order to keep the trust of people in the neighborhood.
Christ Temple Full Gospel Baptist Church Senior Pastor Peterson Mingo says most of his congregants are being patient as the investigation plays out.
And I think that's what's going to turn the page and bring a lot of people into their own conclusions.
As for the memorial, Heilbronner says he's hoping people will help keep it going. He says one of his coworkers is carving a plaque in Henderson's honor. That is expected to be out with the rest of the memorial by tomorrow. Dwayne?
All right, Chris, the man accused of killing Henderson remains held without bond tonight. A judge ordered Rodney Hinton Jr. to be sent to the Claremont County Jail. Hinton will be back in court on Tuesday to consider bond. After an officer-involved shooting on Thursday, 3 other people who were in the same vehicle as 18-year-old Ryan Hinton ran from officers. Hinton was shot and killed by police. 2 other suspects were caught quickly. The 4th was arrested yesterday afternoon.
So this story, I guess this version of it talks about the deputy who was killed much more. And to try to quickly pull it up on X, let me share this. I didn't have a chance to find a better source, but this is from My Mixtapes. It's a man kills sheriff's deputy the day after his 18-year-old son was killed in a police-related shooting, which is what they were referring to at the end of this. I wanted to find the image when this black man was walking by a courtroom full of cops who was staring him down when he first appeared in court. But I can't find it right now. Maybe I'll find it while my esteemed panelists are speaking. Drop a 1 for me in the chat if you guys heard this story, if you followed this story at all. That'll be interesting. In the meantime, Marcus Garvey Way said a tornado just hit. Busy dealing with that while listening. Oh, wow. I hope all is well with you and yours during this time. Cheryl is in the chat saying a Quaba, PCU. Cheryl, thanks for coming through. MG2, were you aware of this story of the black man who killed the deputy after his son was gunned down by cops?
Yeah, very aware of it. Matter of fact, Rodney Hinton Jr. is very inspirational. Matter of fact, like the sound of a bagpipe is one of the most pleasant, beautiful sounds that I've ever heard. I introduced the concept to a lot of black folks in terms of what I call bagpipes. Back in the day, there was back in the '69, one of my favorites. He used to teach us when we were children. His name was Rufus Harley. Brother used to play jazz bagpipes back in the '60s. Real good friend of my mom and dad's. We'd sit around and that's where I learned a little bit of music. A bagpipe. It was a movie called The Onion Field, and when 2 of the white characters got killed, the sound of a bagpipe was just the most pleasant thing because that's what they play at cops' funerals. The bagpipe, and I had to introduce that to a lot of folks because that is a very, very beautiful sound. The thing is Rodney Hinton, whether he did it intentionally or not, it doesn't matter to me. The juxtaposition of the fact that they had to lay flowers on Martin Luther King Jr. Drive, they had to lay flowers in there for someone who, without a doubt, is our enemy. That right there, I mean, the juxtaposition alone is enough to go ahead and smile. But the thing is that was more important, that really, really got me thinking, and why I'm more inspired, even though I can't see the drive, but I might try it anyways, was I didn't know, I mean, when Kobe Bryant got killed, I think they retired his jersey. The fact that they're retiring badges, I think should be more inspiration to African people everywhere. To not look for athletes to retire their jerseys is how we can make them retire badges. That really hit me because I really hadn't thought about that. That's a groundbreaking situation, to where you have impacted someone to where they have to retire the badge or name a street after them. That to me is what Dr. Bobby E. Wright said. Blood debts can only be and must be repaid in blood. So if Rodney Hinton Jr. did do this purposely, I take my hat off to him even more. But even if it's by accident, I think more Martin Luther King Jr. streets should have flowers, teddy bears, and candles, as Dr. Neely Fuller said, not for us, but for those who put us in our graves. So hats off to Rodney Hinton Jr. And if there's a way that we could break him out and I could go ahead and finance a way that he could get to Rwanda, instead of taking those immigrants, I would be more than happy to see him more safe in a country of Africans than a country of Afrikaners. Anyways, I'll go ahead and pass the mic there.
Well said, MG2. Well said. Before I go to Black Steel, let me see if this is the video that'll give us some of those images I was trying to describe a second ago.
Coming on the air here with breaking news, the man accused of intentionally hitting and killing retired Hamilton County Deputy Larry Henderson is about to appear in court. I'm Stephen Albritton.
And I'm Megan Mitchell. 38-year-old Rodney Hinton Jr. faces charges of aggravated murder. Prosecutors say this was an act of retaliation after Hinton Jr.'s son was shot and killed by a Cincinnati police officer.
This morning's hearing will determine if Hinton Jr. can be held without bond. The judge has just sat down in the seats. Let's listen in live as the hearing is set to begin momentarily.
And Rule 12 of the Rules of Superintendence of the Supreme Court. And so I requested every member of a licensed broadcasting staff to fill out a form for filming and recording of these proceedings. And the only provisions that I would order the press that no witness, victim, witness or victim who objects to being recorded, you can't record those persons, but I think you know that, right? So that would be the order, and thank you for filling those out. You wouldn't normally do it, but because of the nature of this case and the high public profile, this is what we're doing. Under the rules of give orders of me granting to the court, I will ask her to mark them as the court's exhibit 1 and to maintain them for the record going forward. Is everyone ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. Is there a case that's going to be called?
Your Honor, Rodney Hinton.
Thank you. Mr. Bennett, at the prior hearing before today.
Have a seat. Have a seat.
Have a seat, sir.
Sit down.
No, let it go. Get him out, let it go.
Mr. Bennett, was that the defendant's blood brother?
Not to my knowledge, Your Honor, no.
All right.
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right, let's resume. And the state in its presentation that the court's required to make these inquiries.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Based upon the officer of testimony, it's Officer Beebe.
Yes, Judge.
And all the facts and circumstances surrounding his testimony this morning, the comments of the state that there will be an order of remand with no bond. Please assure the safety of the defendant and any mental health treatment that can be granted. No bond, and we'll give, if the officers want to stay, and the public, you're welcome to stay through the other hearings. Otherwise, if you are concerned about this issue, you may leave, and then we'll take just a 5-minute break. When you're ready. Okay. All right. Let me finish this order.
May 12th.
5/12 for yours. Yes.
I didn't see the particular scene I was looking for, but you saw the cops in the room behind the glass. There was a scene with this brother being walked through almost a gauntlet of cops who were mean mugging him the whole time. And he was looking them in the eye and just nodding and low-key taunting them a little bit too. In this video here, we saw what I didn't see before. His brother and them were in the room behind the glass, and you see all those cops got up and kind of pushed him up out of there, which I thought was interesting. Black Steel, is this crash out of the year, or will he justify?
Sorry, he was completely justified in what he did. You know, Black people are tired of seeing our children, our young people getting murdered like this, and the cops face no repercussions. And to illustrate this point, there was the case of a young brother who got beat to death by three black cops, and they beat him to death, and they just got found not guilty. Now, mind you, they beat this man for 20 minutes. He was begging for his mother, and as they beat him, it's all on camera, and they got found not guilty. So this man saw the police. They said his son had a gun, and they said he didn't have a gun. Then he dropped it, and they shot him in the back and everything else like that. And he knew justice wasn't going to be served. He knew these cops were going to go home, have a nice life, and they were not going to be punished for what happened to his son. So he decided to take justice into his own hands. So he decided to do for his son what he knew they were never going to give him, which is justice. Now, I've heard some people say that, oh, he didn't kill the cop who killed his son. He just killed some random innocent person, right? But here's the reality. The cops didn't know who his son was. How many times have the police killed some random innocent black person without consequences? Look at the young boy Tamir Rice, who was 12 years old, who was playing with a toy gun in the park. They pulled up and shot him in 2 seconds, right? They didn't know who he was. They didn't know if he was the right suspect. Look at the brother John Crawford, who was walking in a Walmart with the gun at the purchase, and the police showed up and shot him and killed him. Look at Philando Castile, who got shot down in the middle of the street at a routine traffic stop. After telling the officer, I have a weapon, I'll give it to you, and he shoots him anyway. So all of these black people who were sat up here and got murdered by these cops, they didn't care who we were. They didn't care if we were the right black person, if we were the black person who committed the crime. They just saw a nigga. So he just saw a cracker, And as a brother this may be, as angry as this may make some of these white people, black people are tired. We're tired of seeing our people getting murdered brutally, begging and pleading for their lives, and there's nothing that's going to be happening to them. I think they said only like 3% of police involved shootings result in a conviction. 3%. 3%. This man saw that video. He knew his son was never going to get justice. And he took a route that some people may say was wrong. I'm not going to say it was wrong. I'm a father too. If something happens to my kids, so if a cop killed one of my children, did I say that man was wrong? No, not at all. Did I think he was wrong? And this is I know there's some. This is what Neela Fuller called maximum emergency compensatory action. Right. This is a black person who has decided they can no longer exist under the system of white domination. And they have decided to strike back at any means that they have within their power, right? His son is dead. What does he have to live for? All the other stuff in life, he doesn't care about that. He doesn't care. His child is in the ground. So, and I'm pretty sure in jail, they're probably beating him, depriving him of food, mistreating him. I don't think he cares. They're going to give him a death penalty. He doesn't care. The idea that he was able to strike back at one of them is all that he really cared about. He didn't want to be the only family. He didn't want his family to be the only family that cried. If our family got to cry, some of y'all families got to cry too. If my mama got to cry, some of y'all mamas got to cry too. Is it right? Nah, who cares if it's right or wrong? This is the reality of the world we live in. Black people have been under systemic violence. I would dare say genocidal conditions for 400 years. And some days you get the bear, some days the bear gets you. But to think that black people are going to sit back and let you murder us and we sit back and are docile about it. No. And I suspect that you're going to see this a lot more. The Trump administration has already directed the Justice Department to no longer focus on consent decrees. A consent decree is where a police officer or a department is so corrupt that the federal government takes control over to deal with any violations to the citizens' rights. Trump is doing away with that. He's got these law firms giving pro bono representation to any police officer convicted of a crime. So in reality, these police officers need to look at the mirror, look at themselves, because they have created the environment to where if no officer can be held accountable for harming somebody, for killing a citizen, then you're all fair game. They created this environment. They are the ones who create the conditions to where people understand they're not going to receive justice in this life, and they're willing to do whatever possible to get that justice. So it is what it is. If they really consider, they really don't want a target on their back, because right now, because of the way that the thin blue line, they've protected cops. You know what? You have the ability to hold those who commit crimes, who commit violence against the community. You can hold them accountable if you want to, but you chose not to. And because you chose not to, now you put a target on all your backs. So this officer's blood is on their hands. It's just as much as it's on Rodney Hinton Jr.'s hands. It's on their hands because they refuse to hold each other accountable. And now people are going to seek justice in however means they can. So those are my thoughts there. Thanks, Koku.
No problem. Good stuff. In the chat, Marcus Garvey is away says pigs can cry too. Trigger Happy 262 reminds us, he says, interesting that this was a convo last week on the nature of violence and what actions the warrior class was supposed to take. That's why I was, when I put the topics together for this week, I was hoping Buan and all them would have been here for this very topic. But yeah, we talked about this not last week, but the week before. Last time we did the show about violence and what actions the quote unquote warrior class is supposed to take. You gotta take out their folks too. Cheryl says, remember, cops are always diabolical. Kobe and his daughter died. The cops passed around photos of their dead bodies amongst each other. Fuck them all. Lastly, Triggapi says, that's a good point. He's talking about what Black Steel said. We will never get justice in another people's system. I would apply that to international court systems as well, which bleeds to the previous convo we had a few weeks ago, i.e. the warrior class. I know MG2 wanted to add something. MG2, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to reiterate Dr. Bobby E. Wright. Blood debts can only be paid in blood. And the only laws that African people should ever adhere to is the law of collective self-preservation. Bottom line. So whoever has to die in order for us to go ahead and make sure that our self-preservation is secure, it's not a thing of right or wrong. It's something that's like breathing. It must be done. What Rodney Hinton Jr. did, like breathing, it must be done. You have individuals out there crying the blues, and unfortunately, many Negroes are running around talking about some little homosexual that kills a medical insurance executive, and they're running around. You know, he's getting millions of dollars because they've got some angst, white boy angst. Whereas true self-preservation was just no different than what Mackay Johnson did, or Gavin Long did, or Mark Essex, or Colin Ferguson, or Christopher Dorner. I mean, the list goes on. True self-preservation is common sense. And what Rodney Hinton did was teach us all common sense. He's the one who should be supported. Same thing with Carmelo Anthony. They're the ones who showed you that self-preservation is the only law that Black folks, African folks should ever follow. Anyone else's laws, dictates, mandates, doctrines, protocols, whatever else should mean nothing to us. Matter of fact, it's an impediment to us. Anyways, I'll pass the mic.
Yeah, shout out to Carmelo Anthony. He was able to graduate from high school recently. Shout out to him. Is there any last thoughts from either of you, MG2 or Black Steel?
My only thought is this. This again, I said, but this is gonna happen again. All right. Black people should be prepared for the backlash, right? If you're armed, make sure if you can legally conceal and carry, make sure you're armed. and prepared, because it's going to be white people trying to avenge this guy's death, right? The Carmelo Anthony. If this had been 100 years ago, they probably would have lynched that boy and burned down the black town and everything else. And that's what they want. That's what they want to do. Let's get it understood. That's what white people want to do. They want to be able to go and just murder black people indiscriminately like they used to back in the day, right? And they're upset they can't get to Carmelo. They're upset they can't get to our brother Hitting just Senior. They're mad about that. So keep your head on the swivel, my people, because it's gonna be a long summer. And I think that there's even a rumor that people said that the guy who killed George Floyd, Derek Chauvin, should be pardoned because George Floyd died of a drug overdose. Now we all have two eyes; we could all see this. But if they thought the riots in 2020 was bad, they haven't seen anything yet that he's gonna sit up here and release this man who we all blatantly saw killed George Floyd. But just be prepared. It's going to be a long, hot summer.
I just wanted to tell black folks from here on out, it's the old statement, it's better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6. So as long as you know self-preservation, judged by 12, hey, that comes and goes. Carried by 6 is lasts forever. So do whatever you have to do. I'll pass the mic.
Well said. In the chat, Cheryl says, black people need to understand this is not a black nation. If it was, we would have our own military to fight them off. I think that's a good last thought there. Something to really think about if you haven't thought about it already. Let's go to Shoot the Breeze topic number 4. We're making real good time tonight. Make sure to hit the like button, share the show. Comment after the show is done, too. There's always a space to come and comment on the show after it's posted. We could continue some of these conversations as well. Shoot the Breeze topic number 4 says, truth or lie? This is going to be interesting. This takes us to Instagram. I forgot this guy's name here. Does any of you remember his name? Nick Fuentes, I think it is. Nick Fuentes.
That's him. That's that cracker.
Yeah. This is Nick Fuentes. We'll listen.
I'm not a fan, you can tell.
I know. We'll listen, but we will judge. We'll listen and then we'll discuss.
I don't want to live around black people. I just don't. It would be irresponsible if I had a wife and kids to live near black people. It just would be. And that's not to say that every black person is violent. It's not to say that every black person is the same way. But we watch the news. We read the papers. When you drive downtown in Chicago, you know who you got to look out for and worry about when you're thinking about whether you're going to get carjacked, when you're worried about catching a stray bullet, when you're worried about who's going to pull up on the side of the road and literally shove a rifle in your face and steal your iPhone or shoot you point blank, execution style in Lincoln Park. We know who's doing it. I don't want to live near them. I don't want to be near them. They make me nervous. That's a survival instinct. And the way this story unfolded, it's sort of interesting. Apparently this white student, this Austin Metcalf, confronted a friend of the killer, presumably black also, and said something like, hey, you're sitting in the wrong spot. You're in my spot, something like this. And that's when the black guy jumped in and stabbed him to death. Unfortunately, we just don't know. When you're on the subway, when you're driving in your car, when you're in the city streets, you don't know whether the black person in proximity to you is one of the good ones or one of the ones who is going to summon an unbelievable, I mean, literally for people like us, an unthinkable level of spontaneous brutality, senseless and merciless violence in an instant. We don't know. There's ambiguity. You're sitting on a subway. You look across. You see someone acting strange or aggressive. Is this someone who is going to pull out a knife and in 2 seconds slit my throat and kill me? Or is this just someone who's having a bad day? We don't know. I'm not willing to risk my life to find out. It's not worth it to me. I don't want to live around black people. I just don't. It would be irresponsible if I had a wife and kids to live near black people. It just would be. And that's not to say that every black person is violent. It's not to say that every black person is the same way. But we watch the news. We read the papers. When you drive downtown in Chicago, you know who you got to look out for and worry about when you're thinking about whether you're going to get carjacked, when you're worried about catching a stray bullet, when you're worried about who's going to pull up on the side of the road and literally shove a rifle in your face and steal your iPhone or shoot you point blank, execution style, in Lincoln Park. We know who's doing it. I don't want to live near them. I don't want to be near them. They make me nervous. That's a survival instinct. And the way this story unfolded, it's sort of interesting. Apparently, this white student, this Austin Metcalf, confronted a friend of the killer, presumably black also, and said something like, hey, you're sitting in the wrong spot. You're in my spot, something like this. And that's when the black guy jumped in and stabbed him to death. Unfortunately, we just don't know. When you're on the subway, when you're driving in your car, when you're in the city streets, you don't know whether the black person in proximity to you is one of the good ones or one of the ones who is going to summon an unbelievable, I mean, literally, for people like us, an unthinkable level of spontaneous brutality, senseless and merciless violence in an instant. We don't know. There's ambiguity. You're sitting on a subway. You look across. You see someone acting strange or aggressive. Is this someone who is going to pull out a knife and in 2 seconds slit my throat and kill me? Or is this just someone who's having a bad day? We don't know. I'm not willing to risk my life to find out. It's not worth it to me. I don't want.
You know, our African ancestors would have probably said the same thing that he's saying about his people. It's funny now. While I played that, I left open the comment side here, and I just want people to see just how in step these people are. Look at all the people who are going to say, call him a racist, but you can't call him a liar. It's not racism, it's facts, says another person. He's 100% correct. Now, you're going to see some coons in this, just to warn you. Here's one who says, guess I'm one of the good ones, LOL. Live in the suburbs with my family. Someone says the painful truth. Another person says, people call him racist, but not a single word he said is wrong. As I looked down earlier, here's another black person. What's his name? Chef Desmond. He says, shit, I don't want to live around them either. Right? There's more black folks on here who are saying something similar to this guy here. I believe more Americans are getting black behavior fatigue. That's not racism or racial profiling. It's reality. So when you see the prompt says truth or lie, there's a reason behind that, and I think it's a prompt for a kind of a good discussion. How many conscious black folks, low key, might feel like what this Hispanic fellow is saying is true? Even amongst conscious people, I'm sure there's a percentage who feels like what he's saying is true. And I think it's a good place to have a bit of a conversation. Too bad we don't have more people on the panel, but we have enough people between the panel and the chat to have a good conversation. So I want you guys in the chat to post your thoughts on this. You already started to, but post your thoughts. By the way, greetings to Sister Raw, who's saying greetings to all of us. Greetings to Kofi, the Black Critic, who says, what's up, family? And shout out to KW7, who's in the chat as well. But let me start with my panelists first, and then I'll read all your comments in the chat. Who do I start with first? Let me start with Black Steel on this one first. Black Steel, truth or lie? What's your take on what this Nick Fuentes had said?
Well, Nick Fuentes is a liar. He likes to hang around with Kanye West and other self-hating black people, whatever. That's his business. I don't care. The so-called crime stats have often been used to justify racism towards black people. This idea that black people are just going to randomly attack you. But the reality is that most crime is intra-racial, not interracial. So most of the time, if a white person is going to be hurt or harmed or killed, it's going to be by another white person. And that's period. In fact, and I'm just saying that it's probably an anecdotal, but not a reality. But I would say that most white people are safer than black people in black neighborhoods. And I can see that going back to my old neighborhood that I grew up in, it is now becoming more and more gentrified. Now, my mom used to tell me to make it home before the street lights came on, right? There might have been some people selling drugs or whatever. But I see white people walk around in their jogging shorts, walking their French poodles all the time. So who's really in danger? I don't know. But, they've often used a way to distort the statistics about crime and violence from black people to justify their racism. And I say, whatever, do what you want to do. Because we don't want you around us either. We don't want your unseasoned chicken. We don't want you calling the police on us for just existing outside. If you feel so unsafe, you don't have to live around black people. You don't got to send your kids to schools with majority black people. Black people are not losing sleep. If this cracker doesn't want to be around us, that's fine. Right? When white people it's so funny. White kids go into a school and shoot the school. You don't hear people say, "Oh, I don't want my kids to go to school with white kids," even though white kids commit like 90% of the mass shootings. There was a story the other day. Some kid in Texas, his mother is sitting here buying him ammunition and body armor and helping him map out the school, the best routes to go around killing people. But it's black people who are the threat. Oh my God, I can't live around the Negroes because they might hurt me. Physician, heal thyself. Some white dude, and it's something, what is it about these white men who kill their whole family? This white dude who was dealing with PTSD stabbed his whole family to death, killed his wife, killed his son on the day of his high school graduation, and then killed himself. But yet, black people are the dangerous ones. White people have committed genocide, I said this before, on every inhabited landmass on earth. All right? But yet it's black people that are the problems. White people have literally set up here and pushed numerous species of life to extinction. Just completely wiped them out. You know what continent has the most intact of its life form? Is Africa. Africa still has rhinoceroses, still has lions, it still has hippopotamuses, it still has hyenas. Lions were once found all over the world. There were once lions in Europe. There were once wolves all over Europe. But it was white people whose war with nature sat up here and exterminated most of the world's biomass, not black people. So for him to sit up here and talk about how he's worried, oh, I'm so scared that if I happen to get on the subway, some random black person is just gonna attack me for no reason, bro, kill yourself. You that scared or you don't deserve, kill yourself. You're that scared. It's so funny to me. I don't have a problem. You know what? I've always lived around black people. Where I live at now is much more of a mixed neighborhood, but I've always lived around black people. Yeah, you have some issues. Sometimes you don't. Whatever. That's life. There's life here. There's going to be problems anywhere. But white people, but yet for some reason, we don't ever look at these crime stats when we talk about white people. So if your daughter's going to be raped, it's more likely going to be a white person. You know, if your 401k is going to get stolen, it's going to be a white person. Because we always talk about violent crime as this is a black thing, whereas a white collar crime is a majority white thing, which also ends up costing the lives of millions of people. When you sit there and you steal people's life savings, and leave them with nothing. But yeah, they get a slap on the wrist for that. What's the difference between you going into a grocery store for $100 and you stealing $400 million from people who invested their money in what they hope would be a pension? It happens all the time. But yet, it's really the true fear is black people. This man is just a racist, and he's what they call a race realist who wants to think that he's crouching his racism in statistics and data. That there's some reason that we should all be afraid of black people. I don't care if he's afraid of me or not. Stay where you are. You go over there, stay over there. I'm not gonna bother you. I think maybe if these crackers have a healthy fear of black people, they'll act right. So I'll leave it there. Thanks.
No, thank you, Black Seal. I appreciate that. In the chat, one of the things Cheryl said was, that's our sentiments exactly. That's the same reason we don't want to be around them. Agreed. Trigger Happy 262 Plus said, everything white nationalists say about black people is projection, because all the things he is saying, black people can say that about white people with clear facts and historical evidence. Absolutely. But Cheryl's comment is an interesting one. I forgot to ask Black Seal. Maybe I should ask you now. The quick follow-up. Black Seal, I know a black person or two who would say that black folks are evil. They kill each other all over the world. Blah, blah, blah. You know, repeating this type of stuff that Fuentes is saying. What would you say to black folks who have no good faith in their own people, who go along with this type of commentary, similar to some of these black folks in the comment section of this very same video? What would you say to them?
If you go over there, stay over there. All right. If you hate being black so much, go ahead and live around white people. That's what you want. Go do it. There's nothing keeping you around us. We would be better off if we purged those self-hating elements from our community. We would truly be better off. We don't need them pretending to be in brotherhood with us, because they're not. I got a student, one of my young students, black girl. One day she was in class, she was doing her hair. She said, "Oh, I hate having nigger hair." And she said it with such vitriol in her voice. It's a 15-year-old girl. And she said, "I hate having nigger hair." Right? And I had to stop the lesson. I said, hold on. Keep your self-hatred to yourself. We don't do that in here. I'm a black man. I'm proud of my hair. You should be proud of your hair too, child. I don't know what you're hearing, this type of stuff. And she's probably hearing it from home. She's probably hearing it from her peers. So when you're young like that, you try to reach out to them. But when you get to be old, in your 20s and 30s and 40s, go over there. Go live with white people. Live with Hispanic people. You can't come back though. Once you're over there, the door is closed. If we're so horrible, we're so despicable, and we're so dangerous, go. You know what I'm saying? Don't try to dip back in on holidays and try to get some food because you don't like white people. No, you eat that potato salad with the raisins in it, buddy. You go eat that boiled chicken. Don't come back over here. Go over there because you hate us. We're so dangerous. Stay where you at. All right, I'm done.
Appreciate that. Let's welcome in Cheryl to the panel. Nice black African woman. Cheryl, how are you this week?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. Thanks for asking and thanks for coming through.
Yeah, so I was just going to bring up that same thing you brought up about black people having like this, what Nick Fuentes is saying, a lot of black people do sound like that. And unfortunately, a lot of our family members, like, I'm just thinking about a couple of my family members, and I'm just like, in my mind, I'm just like, oh my goodness, they sound just like this man. They sound, and they have no idea, they sound just like him. It's just crazy. And I'm just like, I mean, we know where it comes from, but it's, I don't know. I don't know what to say about it. It's just, it's just kind of funny to me, because if you want to think like that, I mean, it's, it's all constructed. But when people like him start talking about like Chicago, like white people, that's like white people's go-to when they want to talk about black violence and black crime. They always go to the same talking points, talking about Chicago. That's their buzzword, right? And talking about crime with black people. They always go straight to that. So, I mean, he's just some white people will come right out and just say, hey, I don't want to be around black people, and because we need to preserve our race. There are a couple of videos like that on YouTube. They'll come right out and say it. But people like him, they're meant to be agents of confusion specifically for black people. So, like, he's purposely trying to be confusing. And so, because he has whatever he's trying to do, he has his agenda. So yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that. So
I appreciate that, Cheryl. Trigger Happy 262 talks about consequences as well, about self-hating. He says we have to get to a point where there's a consequence in self-hating. Right now, there's no consequence for self-hating. People self-hate and do whatever they want. And I agree with that. We got to start dishing out some punishment as a people, but that requires us to get together to discuss these things and to implement this change that we want to see in our communities and slash our nations, MG2, you've heard everything everyone else had to say. What say you to all of it?
I am just digging what I'm hearing. This, I've heard a lot about this Nick Fuentes, but this is the first time I think I've ever heard more than 15 seconds of his diatribe, for lack of a better term. And listening to that, and I guess a lot of reactions that African people have about, first off, I can't see very well, but it looked like someone who has been in you could put him in a priest uniform or a priest's robe, and he would probably fit the model and the deviance that goes behind it. He definitely looks like he has done some very dark things, for lack of a better term. This Fuentes character, Fuentes, that's a funny name too. It doesn't sound Anglo, but it is what it is. I think he's become one of my, I have no reverence for this clown, but I have to say he has become one of my more favorite chimpanzees, for lack of a better term. Here's what I mean. I would love, I really agree that Nick Fuentes and those that are like him should feel the way he feels. And I hope he accelerates that and spreads that to all other whites that are around him. Matter of fact, I think that should be part of this Trump administration, because the more and more that my enemy fears me, even when I'm sleeping, when I have real estate in my enemy's head, that they have to sleep with one eye open, because he doesn't know that maybe one day I'll go ahead and put a rifle in his face. Just the fact that he has to sleep with that on his mind is, can you imagine if Timothy Loman had thought that when he went ahead to murder Tamir Rice, that if he had that in his mind and would sleep with one eye open saying, I won't go into a black neighborhood because I might get shot, Tamir Rice would be alive. If Brian Encina, or whatever that devil's name was, woke up that morning, one day in Dallas or whatever, and said, you know what, I'm not going to stop any black folks because maybe somebody might go ahead and put a rifle in my face. I heard it from Nick Fuentes. Sandra Bland would still be alive. Botham Jean would still be alive. Tanisha McBride would still be alive. Eric Garner, Charles. Oh man, the names are the names are endless. Akai Gurley, you name it. See, we need more Nick Fuentes in the fear that has. I love that kind of fear, even though I know that he's doing it as a hustle. Even though I know that he's doing it to garner, because you know he wants to be around black folks. That's why any individual that tells you, "Oh, I don't like this and I don't like that," they have a secret love for it. So that is what I fear. This little diddly boy piddling whatever Nick Fuentes, because you know he does some stuff in the dark. The fact that he has to have that he wants to be around us by saying he doesn't want to is what I fear. I don't want him around us. I don't want anything like looks like him or any kind of lineage that he comes from around us. I would like them all to have that kind of fear. Every day that every time that they wake up, every time they take a shit, when they pick their nose, they cook, they swim, they go to their hockey mats, I want them looking over their shoulders to say, will there be another Rodney Hinton Jr. to take my life? Is there a Christopher Dorner somewhere on a tall tower ready to take me out? Is there a Carmelo Anthony that might have a knife in their back pocket and just might get me at a movie theater? I want that kind of fear out of these bastards every day, because that's the kind of fear that they had for me and mine. Me and mine, as Dick Gregory said, every time that he was driving, he had to put his hands on 10 and 2 because he doesn't know if a cop will take. That's cowardice. But that's the kind of cowardice they instilled with us, because as I heard my brother say earlier, there was no consequence. Not only consequence for the sellout, but consequence for those who created the sellouts. The thing is we need more Nick Fuentes. Thank you, Nick Fuentes, because unfortunately, I don't think you have that kind of fear. Maybe I should do a Rodney Hinton on him, so therefore that fear could be realized with all the other Nick Fuenteses out there, like the Marjorie Taylor Greens or the Boberts or the Steve Bannons or anyone else of these Peckerwoods. See, the Nick Fuenteses are out there to go ahead and make you want to love them. By telling them that, they make this is what creates the sellout, the coons and the shine bones. What it does is it creates some black folks who say, well, we try to rationalize this devil's behavior. We try to go ahead and say, well, you know, it's not us. We're not all that. You ever heard that? Remember when they called us black identity extremists? And I had more black folks running around saying, well, I'm not an extremist. I didn't do nothing to nobody. They just do that to us. We didn't do nothing to nobody. And no, I don't rationalize my devils. If you want to call me an extremist, you want to call me a terrorist, damn it, I'll wear that as long as I know you can't get sleep. As long as I know these crackers, they from sun up to sundown or can't see it morning and can't see it night. As long as I know these Peckerwoods are going to have to look over their shoulder, damn it, call me everything. Shoot, call me Winnie the Pooh. As long as they're scared, that's all I care about. As long as they're threatened, that's what I live for. And the thing is to rationalize this. Unfortunately, I see more black folks say, well, that's not us, man. That's what the Peckerwoods said. No, let that be us. Okay, if you're scared, okay, that's me. I'll sign up for it. If you think that I'm going to put a rifle in your face or kill your wife and your children, okay, I'll sign up for it. That's me. Because I want you to make sure that every time till you go to your grave, when you come out of your womb and go to the grave as my enemy, I want to know, I want you to know that I'm your threat, that I'm the one that wants to take your life. You will not have a moment's of peace because that's what you did to mine. You made mine have to go ahead and look over their shoulder, or when they go to churches and afraid that my aunts and my moms won't get raped by your so-called cops. See, we lived in the fear that now all of a sudden they're trying to play the victim and saying they're living in fear. No, we have not given that fear. We have not signed up to be that threat that we should be, that black identity terrorist that we should be. So Nick Fuentes, I hope that you post more of this, because hopefully we'll get something that has been denied us for a long time, and that's a clue. I don't care how we as black folk get a clue, whether we have to get it from WhatsApp, download it from Amazon, or sculpt it out of clay, or blink it up like I Dream of Genie, or pick it out of the tree. Get a clue. And that clue is the more and more that these crackers fear us, even if it's a perception of them wanting to be us and trying to, again, that reverse psychology, making us say, well, we ain't no threat. No, I want them to know that we are that threat. Once we get that clue and actually go ahead and realize that we are that threat, well, then the Nick Fuenteses will be going around saying, can I join the Nation of Islam? Because I don't want to face them black folks. I ain't going in their neighborhood because I know what they're going to do to me. And that'll be a realized fear instead of something to make black folks try to feel good. I'll pass the mic.
Well stated, MG2. Well stated. Cheryl dropped. I think she had a bad connection or something. But sis, if you want to come back up, by all means, click the link, and you could rejoin us again. Shout out to the Forecast Radio, who's out in the chat as well, saying what's up to everyone. There was something I was going to bring up, and I lost it. Well, let me ask this question, I guess. So, 2 weeks ago when we had the show last time, and I'm bringing this up because Trigger reminded us as well. But we had that conversation about you. There was a gentleman who was talking about the warrior class needs to take these folks out, take out their children. You know, you have guys like General Langley, who's trying to interfere with the AES, particularly Burkina Faso, and President Traore. And the gentleman in the video at the time was saying, yo, go after these CEOs and these generals and take out their kids and let them feel that threat. And I'm listening to MG2 and I'm thinking back to that conversation as well. Has there been a change of mind when it comes to that based on the conversation we had in this prompt? Let me ask Black Steel that directly, I guess.
We got to be honest, right? We don't have a warrior class, you know? Black people, what we do, we react to certain conditions, right? But we don't have a sustained resistance. And that's the reality. Something happens to a Black person, we get mad, we march in the street, we might kill somebody, we might burn some stuff down, and then it fizzles out until the next atrocity. Well, we don't have a sustained resistance. We react to something, either somebody goes to jail, somebody doesn't go to jail, somebody gets acquitted, something happens, and then it fizzles out. The problem is that because we don't have a sustained response to a continuous problem, which is white domination and supremacy. We don't have a warrior class. We have some Black people who may have enough is enough and they react, right? But we don't have a sustained resistance because I don't think that the majority of us understand what we're up against. Not only that, but we don't believe that we could possibly win, right? The idea, we're only 13% of the population. We're not going to be able to do anything. I've heard that so many times. Black people have already made up in their mind they're not going to be able to win this. So as far as going after the children and hurting people and whatnot, that sounds really good on paper. It does. But first of all, most people ain't, unless you're an outright psychopath, most people ain't gonna be able to kill no little kids. That's just how it is. You got to be a hardened warrior, I think, to do something like that, and that's okay. Everything is for everybody. But yeah, we don't. There's no warrior class that exists among African people, at least not in the United States. We don't have any trained military division. There's no Navy SEALs or paratroopers or anything else. No special forces that African people have, because we don't realize that we're at war with white global domination, which is a threat to life on this very planet. The entire world, every non-white person on this planet should be in direct conflict with white global domination. Because if we're not, then that means the ultimate destruction of the human race. It's just that simple. It's that simple. But because there's like, all white people ain't bad. I agree. All white people aren't bad. There are some decent white people. The problem is that the decent white people don't run anything. The decent white people don't have the balls to deal with their racist cousins and their racist grandparents. Because that's Meemaw. I can't say anything about Paw. Yeah, Paw says he hates niggers and he killed a couple niggers back when he was on the police force, but that's my Paw. I can't say nothing to him, even though they got a Black Lives Matter sticker on their laptop. So, I don't think that as far as in the West, I don't see a Black warrior class arriving, especially not in the U.S. Black Americans, for the most part, are completely pacified as far as, the fire that was in us during the 60s and 70s. COINTELPRO took care of that. They killed many of our revolutionary Black leaders, and the ones they didn't kill, they exiled. And then they turned the academy, the intellectual space against us. So instead of talking about Black nationalism and being a nation within a nation, now we have Black feminism and intersectionality. And people talk about Black male privilege, So it won't be in the U.S. But I myself have never been against violence. I understand there's a time, there's a place, there's a need for it. Even, and those of us who, we know about Mandela and how he behaved after he was released from prison. But after the attacks in Soweto and other things like that, he understood that the violence that the apartheid state had towards South Africa could only be met with more violence. That marching and chanting and singing wasn't going to bring the apartheid state down. And that's when they created the armed wing of the ANC. So I'm not against violence. I think it's maybe necessary. So that's it. I'm gonna leave it there. Thank you.
Hey, Koku, can I interject something?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you, Black Steel. Again, you inspire me so much. You just gave me something and it took damn near 60 some years for me to figure this out. I'm glad you guys brought up warrior class, because the thing is a true warrior, the only empathy or the only type of operated mode that it is a mode of self-preservation. And it actually, in other words, here's what I mean. Black Steel brought up something about killing children. Well, I don't call them children, I call them spawn. And anything that's not a black is not a child to me. It's a spawn, it's another species. So therefore I have no empathy. Therefore I have absolutely no conscience. See, I'm the psychopath that psychopaths created, because the psychopathic nature of my enemy that raped my mothers and my aunts and my grandmothers, and they did, both my grandmothers, and killed my uncles and stuff like that. See, they created the psychopath in me. And I say psycho, CYCLEPATH. And in other words, what I'm saying is I have no conscience. If every one of my enemies spawn, I don't call them children, every one of my enemies spawn that I encounter, I don't look at that as something to go ahead and exist amongst. I look at that as something that must be eradicated quickly, whether it's their spawn or the fathers and mothers that produce them. To me, it is something that must be liquidated, dead, and only erased by my hand, my knife, my gun. And I don't care from womb to death, from the age of 0 to 100. The only thing that I see when I encounter them is I gotta kill them. I don't care, because there is no conscience when it calls self-preservation for African people. And it took years to get this way. It took, decades to really figure this out, because that told me, as you say, warrior class. Unfortunately, many don't adopt the warrior strategy, and the warrior strategy is self-preservation. And there are no innocents on the other side of the field. There's no such thing as an innocent enemy. There's no such thing whether that enemy spawn has done nothing to you. A roach is a roach and must be killed. There's no such thing as putting my hand in a bag full of snakes and trying to pick one out and say, this is a good one. They're all snakes. They all got to die. And preferably by my hand. Not because I have an emotional outlook or hate or anything else. It's because I want us to live as African people. And those that are an impediment to our lives as African people are non-African people, or I should say non-African species. Whether that species is a baby rat or a baby snake, or whether that species one that has a 100-year lifespan of marginalizing my folks, we just call them so-called old snakes. They all gotta die. And if that's a psychopath, and I'm very, like I said, you inspired me because it took me decades to get this. If that is a PSYCHOPATH psychopath, I will not only co-sign and adopt that. Matter of fact, I'll give him my credit rating, and I will get first in line to go ahead and join that collective. Because until we as African people become that kind of psychopath that could kill their spawn, i.e. their babies, then it will be their babies soon, like the Derek Chauvin who was a child once, that will end up killing one of us. I'll pass the mic.
Good stuff, MG2. Yeah, I liked what Black Seal said because it was a little bit of a different response and a bit more measured, if you will, a bit more centered, if you will, as to some of the realities. Like he brought up COINTELPRO and stuff like that. But ultimately, I believe in what MG2 is talking about. You can't view your enemy and have all that empathy and all that type of shit. If you have to be the psychopath, go ahead and be the psychopath. But we got to get there. We got to build that up. Cheryl came back. Cheryl, you want to add anything to what you've heard since you left the panel?
Yeah, sorry. I was just.
How did you feel about that conversation?
What was the what conversation?
How did you feel about that conversation 2 weeks ago? Yeah, 2 weeks ago we talked about the warrior class, and there was a guy we showed on screen. He was urging the warrior class to retaliate more. You know, when these folks take out your general or take out someone from your community, to go and take out their children, etc. I know you were in the chat that day, so I was just curious to see what were your thoughts on that in general.
So I mean, I don't expect Black people to do an eye for an eye. The majority of people are not going to be like the Hinton case, or they're not going to be like the people in this chat. They're going to, because black people are mesmerized by white people because of religion. So I don't expect them to do an eye for an eye, especially with white people, especially. And when I say white people, I mean white people like Hispanics, all of that, all of them, they all white. Arabs, they just sandcrackers. They all white. They're not going to do none of that with none of them. So that's just the reality of it. Yeah, I mean, it's nothing more I can say about that. Just religion's got us by the balls. Like it's got us bad. So
Agree with that. One of these days, I'll tell you all about my recent return back to my home country, and I realize why we are so defeated in these islands. And the big part of it is religion. I'll just put it like this: is that religion and that life-death dichotomy. That's why we're defeated people. But I think MG2 wanted to add something.
I want to say something.
Or maybe it was Blackfield.
Yeah, real quick.
Okay.
Look at how Nick Fuentes just lied on Carmelo Anthony and made it seem like this white boy was really just sitting down, minding his own business, and Carmelo just attacked him. See how easily these crackers can lie? And he lied with no hesitation. And he just obscured the entire facts of the case that this young Black man was sitting where he wanted to. There were no assigned seats. And this white boy had already attacked him previously. He punched him in the face and he broke his phone. And he was surrounded by other white people who were threatening harm to this. It's so funny how he left all of that out. Because in this race mind, Black people don't deserve the right to self-defense because Black people are not human, right? Only human beings have the right to self-defense. So you can look at this Black child that's being attacked by a group of white people who've already previously assaulted him and still paint him as the aggressor. even though they punched him in the face first, even though they broke his cell phone. So I think it's how he just stood up here and just completely told the facts of the case just wrong and just obscured the fact that this black dude just jumped over over the bleachers at the football game and just threw a knife through Austin Metcalf's chest like he was John Wick or somebody. It's this dude is in a perpetual state of fear. Good for him. Good for him. Hope he stays afraid.
Absolutely. We're gonna end about at about 11, so we have about 17 minutes left. I want to squeeze in Shoot the Breeze topic number 5. This will be the last one for tonight. I am hoping it's not too long of a conversation, but we'll see how it goes. Shoot the Breeze topic number 5 says, "Are liberals the problem?" Are liberals the problem? This came with a link that's taking us to X.
Yes, they are.
Are liberals the problem? Black Seal already says yes. This is a post by Jean-Jacques Dessalines. He or she says, "Why must liberalism be eradicated?" by James Foreman. So this is a video, short video, minute and a half. We'll watch it maybe twice to make sure we get the gist of it, and then we'll discuss it.
Liberalism is defined by Foreman as the refusal to engage in principled ideological struggle inside and outside of a revolutionary organization. That's from the pamphlet, page 13. Foreman argues that liberalism must be eradicated. I'm going to run that back. Must be eradicated if we are to create a successful revolutionary organization and greater revolutionary society. Liberalism is inherently destructive because it may posture, it may give lip service, it may put on the aesthetics of or give credence to radical revolutionary ideas, but there's no spine on it. There's no backbone there. There is no follow through to seize state power. Oftentimes, the desire to overturn state power and redistribute it to flip our relationship with property, as George Jackson states that a revolution must do. You have to subvert the relationship that we have to property right now, redistribution on a mass scale. Oftentimes the desire to overturn and redistribute that power is not present at all because liberals benefit materially from the systems that we have in place. They don't have a desire to deviate from them, even if they benefit from pretending like they could. Remember the specific definition of these words as we move through the rest of these thoughts. Liberalism is defined by Foreman as the refusal to engage in principled ideological struggle inside and outside of a revolutionary organization. That's from the pamphlet, page 13. Foreman argues that liberalism must be eradicated. I'm going to run that back. Must be eradicated if we are to create a successful revolutionary organization and greater revolutionary society. Liberalism is inherently destructive because it may posture, it may give lip service, it may put on the aesthetics of or give credence to radical revolutionary ideas, but there's no spine on it. There's no backbone there. There is no follow through to seize state power. Oftentimes, the desire to overturn state power and redistribute it to flip our relationship with property, as George Jackson states that a revolution must do. You have to subvert the relationship that we have to property right now, redistribution on a mass scale. Oftentimes the desire to overturn and redistribute that power is not present at all because liberals benefit materially from the systems that we have in place. They don't have a desire to deviate from them, even if they benefit from pretending like they could. Remember the specific definition of these words as we move through the rest of these thoughts.
Interesting. Let me see if there's more to it. No, this is the only video. So this is why liberalism must be eradicated, according to James Foreman. Let me start with MG2 on this one. MG2, I appreciate you hanging with us this week as we were kind of short on panelists. So thank you for coming through and staying the whole time, all right?
Well, I appreciate you for having me here. You know, one thing that really is quite perplexing is when African people are adopting what I call isms, quote isms, conservatisms, a modality of someone else's ideology or someone else's frame of reference is nothing more than an ism. Conservatism, Buddhism, this ism, that ism. That's still someone else's frame of reference. Liberalism ain't no different. And the reason I say that is because I don't care about redistribution of power, personally. And I think that African people hopefully one day won't be adopting the quote unquote isms, because the only thing that matters for an African person is how many of its enemies that he could kill so he could destroy them. It's not about going ahead and redistributing, analyzing, or rationalizing someone else's power, because the bottom line is they still have power over you. As long as you adopt isms, they still have it, whether you're a Buddhism, or whatever ism you want to be. See, the only ism that should basically make it into the inbox of an African is a killism. Kill everything that ain't us. Put everyone else that ain't us, make their corpses are the places we should step on. That is power. Not distributing power that someone else owns and controls. Real power is when your enemy does not exist and you get your resources. That's real power. Because clearly somebody else has shown us how that works, at least for the last 500 years. See, the thing is I love the intellectual talk, which I'm not saying because of the beautiful sister that was talking. I got to say, anyone with the name of Jean-Jacques Dessalines, anyone that knows Jean-Jacques Dessalines' story, you got to love it. But the bottom line is this, is I don't, personally, the liberalism to me is nothing more than a waste. Okay, it is, or any kind of ism, or any kind of discussion on someone else's power and why that power exists and what isms should and should not be within that context, to me is a waste of time. The only productive mode of time that anyone that is adopting this concept of ism should be is how can I destroy those that definitely have a good track record of destroying us? Not so we could share power, not so we could go ahead and show them something. No, I want the problem gone. As Dr. Kamal Campbell said before he passed, that African people, this is basically, he was saying, this is our Waterloo. Unfortunately, and I hate to use that term. And he says, somebody has to devise the one system that is going to eradicate these bastards. And I'm talking non-African people. He says somebody has to come up with that's going to make them disappear. Kill them all is what he was saying. A lot of black folks couldn't deal with that. They didn't realize it. But he was just basically telling us there is no living amongst those that there is no living amongst those that are the walking dead, for lack of a better term, or the viruses that have clearly infected this planet. His modality was kill them all, as Dr. Khalid Muhammad would say. So, as this, this commenting on isms and liberalisms and whatever isms are, I'll leave that for the folks that want to go ahead and not get anything done. But for those that really want to go ahead and make sure African self-preservation, that we don't just thrive or survive, but we conquer this world. Well, the only isms that if you want to join, that's called killing everybody else and leaving no bodies behind. I'll pass the mic.
Good stuff as usual, MG. Cheryl, what say you to this? Are liberals the problem?
Yeah, so I don't believe liberals are the problem. I think they are a problem, one of many problems. Everything she's saying is accurate about liberals. Can't take that away from her. She knows what she's talking about in that respects. But at the end of the day, we no matter what time period we're in, if it's the 1900s, 2000s, whatever it is, even during the time when Black people had their own I guess towns, Tulsa, Rosewood, whatever. Some people would argue, black people, particular Black Americans, we would argue that, we were doing much better then than we are now. And while that might be true, at the end of the day, the U.S. military can still come in and jack you up. And that's the bottom line. And if you are not using or trying to, your goal is not to have your own money For instance, all the money we use it's got slave owners on it, so it doesn't matter how much success you think you have. At the end of the day, this isn't your nation, and that's what it always comes back to. So when I think in particular, that's where the whole FBA thing comes into question, because they'll say things like, oh, well, if you leave America, you're fleeing, right? I'm kind of getting a little off topic off the liberal thing, but it kind of still goes into it, because we're talking about all of these, like a person said earlier, like all of these isms, but what's our end goal? It's not about fleeing. Africa is your land. Africa, some of their money is backed by France. Some of their money is backed by the US, the Britons, whatever. But at least you have people on the continent that are trying to get rid of those systems. You have some countries in Africa that are trying to expel, France. They're trying to get rid of their currency. They're trying to get rid of their language and all that. At least you have that. Yes, they have their confusions just like we do. But that's the starting point. All of this ism talk and this liberal stuff, I feel like it's not that it's a distracting point, but it's kind of like small stuff compared to what we're up against. And so I think, we need to really be focused on getting away from these people. Let white people have America. Let them have it. Why not? Let them have it, because if half of the Black American population just decided to up and leave and go back to Africa and do what we do, start building. Start really building. Like with real like leaders like Kamal Kambon, Obadale Kambon, then we will be really a force. So I just let the white people just let them have their thing. And it's not giving up, because it was never your land to begin with. Even when you had Tulsa and all of that, and you had all those thriving Black businesses and all of that, that's great, but it never really was yours, because if they could just come in and bomb it, it's not yours anyway. So all of this talk about liberals and all that, it's just to me, it's just like whatever, and I'll leave it there.
I appreciate that, Cheryl. In the chat, Trigabi262 Plus says, and to be clear, there are different forms of liberals, and all of that can encompass the politics of America's political parties, settler colonies, or Europe's political parties. He goes on to say, so conservative in an American context is more classical liberal, same as the person they are counter to, the liberal of the so-called left. He says, I don't mind isms because we got Garveyism. But Garveyism is an attempt of modernizing the African mode of production, which is neither socialist or capitalist. He says, Black people have to understand that our frame of reference should not be European political science of any variety, but the thousands of years of us formulating governments and economies with no whites. Sister Ross says, from the oldest to the youths, coming forth from them female hosts. Trigger says, any political science from white peoples is incomplete, even communism. They can't create a system of collectivism and community without there being something that is missing. That's why I'm no communist, he says. Raw finishes that thought and says, it's our planet. With that said, Black Steel, you've seen and heard everything everyone else had to say. What say you to all of it?
MG2 gonna get your channel shut down, bro. MG2 is gonna get the Better Medicine podcast shut down. That's all. But let me say, I want to address the actual point, right? Yes, liberals are the problem. They're not the problem, but they are a problem, right? And this is so funny because as everybody was talking, I remember the speech Dr. King had made from Birmingham jail. And he says that, the Negro's great stumbling block in his stride toward freedom is not the White Citizens Council or the Ku Klux Klan, but the white liberal who is more devoted to order than justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice, who constantly says, I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I cannot agree with your methods of direct action. So, and then Malcolm X says something similar to where the white liberal, the northern white liberal, is more racist than the white southerner. Because at least the white southerner is honest. He's in your face. He's directly. But these white liberals will smile in your face. They'll wear kente cloth on the floor of the U.S. Congress. But then what they'll do is they'll turn around and they'll vote to give more money to police forces. You know, they'll sit up here and they'll support increasing the police budget, right? So I honestly, I agree with the assessment, but the thing is that what do we do with this knowledge, right? Because the liberal class exists only to reinforce the status quo. You have the conservative who wants to conserve. The liberal wants to make adjustments to make those that are minorities or marginalized people to have them fit within the system. So the liberal wants more black cops, right? The liberal wants a new, you know, they don't mind having gay soldiers in the military, drop bombs on children in Africa and in the Middle East, right? So liberals are all about the appearance of good, right? But what makes them dangerous is that they put on a very nice front. And we start to see the limits of liberalism, right? And that's just social liberalism. Economic liberalism is a whole different story. We'll talk about that later. But overall, yes, they do. They are not the problem, no, but they are a problem because they attempt to keep the idea that you know, we can overcome, we can make changes or whatever. But yet the same thing is, you know, they're just going to continue the system as it is. I seen a meme, and it showed a American warplane with a gay flag on it and a Black Lives Matter sticker on it, and then the people being bombed were like, they said something. They said the next bombs are going to come from a woman president, and it really feels like they're making change in the world. Like that's kind of how I feel about this liberalism, right? The performative things they do, the way they take and a good example of that right now. What's the cracker name? Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is a good example of that, right? Bernie Sanders is what some people would call a sheepdog, right? What he does, he takes the rage and the anger that many people feel, and what he does, he funnels that rage and that anger into the Democratic Party, where it dissipates and it doesn't do anything. So, you know, many Americans right now are currently upset at the Trump administration, right? And he's outside, you know, you know, supporting rallies and whatnot. Then he says, "You need to go vote. We need to go. That's going to be the solution. Just vote. Everybody needs to go out here and vote for the Democrats." What? So this is why liberals are dangerous because, you know, they take the rage. They say the Democratic Party is where the protest movements go to die, and that's very true. And that's why people are frustrated with the liberals because they'll sit up here and say, "Oh, we need to do this and do that," and you guys are right, and you guys are right to be angry, but then it's still the same old stuff. So I'll go ahead and I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Oh man, great conversations tonight. I appreciate all of you and your participation in the chat. Is there any last thoughts by anybody on the panel for this Shooter Breeze topic number 5 tonight? If not, before you guys leave the panel, I'd like to ask you guys to give a shout out. Something positive you saw in the black world this past week, or past 2 weeks since we were on last week. Something positive you saw in the black world, and or something positive that happened in your world, personally. I'll start with MG2. What would you like to shout out this week, MG2?
Oh, first off and foremost, of course, the Sahel states, and especially Ibrahim Traore. He's become one of my favorites. I wish when I was, because he's half my age. I wish when I was that age, I was thinking, in terms of manhood like he is. But it's never too late. The thing is even more positive is this conversation. In terms of, what the thing is we have the ability to change the world. And when I say the world, I'm talking, it's our world. We were here first. We should have been the only ones here. Fortunately, I don't know how these other individuals that are not us ended up here, but they're here and they must leave, hopefully by our hand. The most important thing is to realize that irrespective of these other species that are out there, I don't call them people because they're not African. We have the ability, since we were the first to introduce the world to everything that the world is using, including fire and how to stand up and take a piss or how to snore. It was us who developed it, who invented it. We invented everything. Once we start to look in the mirror and say, wait a minute, all these other species are not even mortals. They're not even immortals. They're not even, the feces that you have in the toilet is more important than anything that is non-African walking on this planet. Once you get to that realization and you look in that mirror and you say, gosh, dog it. I mean, I can create anything. I can do anything. Anything that is not us is so immaterial, it means nothing. A fly has more importance. Once you do that, you could actually conquer the world. You could do anything you want. Anytime somebody tells you, oh, you can't this and because they're reactionary. And I'm glad that Black Steel brought that up earlier about the reactionary. Once we get out of that, a reactionary mindset, we'll do what our ancestors, whether it was Imhotep or whether it was McCoy or whether it was Garrett Morgan. It doesn't matter. We will start to create the future for ourselves and not reacting to a future that someone else has put in our face. I'll pass the mic. Thank you guys so much. And always enjoy listening to you guys.
Appreciate you, MG2. Thank you very much. Cheryl stepped off, I guess. Trigger Happy 262 plus in the chat said my shouts out is to the Namibian president and Mahama. Mahama is doing some interesting things with the gold industry by kicking foreigners out, fighting corruption. But let's see how it pans out. He says the Namibian president is trying to recapture the oil and gas sector of her country. Yeah, shout out to all of them as well. Black Steel, what would you like to shout out this week?
I think I saw a good interview that Traore had. I think it was with the Russia Times. I don't know if I posted it, but if I didn't, I'll put it in the chat. It's a really good interview. And he talks about how he was hurt when he heard what the Marine General Langley said. Black people got to realize that all skin folk ain't your kinfolk, right? Every Black person who looks like you is not for you. So I would just say shout out to Traore again. Good interview. If it's not already, if I didn't already post it, then I'll put it in the Discord. And shout out to you, Koku, for coming back here and doing this show every week, man. Even if we don't have a full house, you're here, and I appreciate everything you do, man.
Yeah, thank you for that. My shout outs to all of you who come through as well, pretty much every week, if not every week, to help push these conversations. But my real shout out is to the two gentlemen, the young fella and the father that we discussed in tonight's show, Carmelo Anthony and the other brother whose name is slipping me right now, who took out that sheriff after his son was killed by cops. So shout out to them, man. You got you one. I appreciate that. Next week I'm traveling. I don't remember. I'm traveling back to New York. I don't remember if I'm reaching back here in the early evening, but I'll post and let you guys know if we have a show next week or not. If not, I'll be back the week after. But in any event, man, be the best African you guys can be. And we'll talk again in the near future. You guys take care. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast with your host, Koku. If you like what you just heard, we hope you pass along our web address, bittermedicineblogs.com, to your friends and colleagues, and share our show to all your social media. Be sure to check out our archive section on our website for previous podcasts. This has been a KWAZ radio production. Join us next time for another session of the Bitter Medicine Podcast. Follow us on Facebook at Bitter Medicine Show, Twitter, Bitter Meds, Tumblr, Bitter Meds, Instagram, Bitter Medicine.